Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
Got my cold mocha.
Oh yeah, I made a hot coffee. Pretty late night last night.
It's the way it goes, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for another reason.
Okay, we won't go into that. Oh, maybe we should.
Yeah.
Is that work related?
Nah.
No. Boy. So what happened?
Playing basketball last night. Had a collision with one of the other big boys and hit the floor pretty hard and bounced and landed. First impact was my wrist and my knee and so little fracture in the wrist.
Yeah. So you're a Newcastle, Maitland area.
Yeah, I'm a Lake Macquarie. I'm just up the road from you, about 10 minutes up the road from you. I'm at Wangi.
Wangi, yeah. So did you go into John Hunter?
I went to the Marta.
Okay, yeah.
So I went there when I got bitten by a spider in January, and they were really good in there. So I was like, I'm just going straight back there.
Yeah.
And they got
Fair enough.
You can get online now and check like I don't know how accurate it is, but you can check like how many people are being triaged and stuff like that. So
yeah, okay.
I looked at all the other hospitals and they were pretty busy. And
yep.
So yeah,
that's interesting. You can do that. So you can see on the John Hunter as well.
Yeah. You see the 4 major hospitals. So the Marta, John, Belmont, and Maitland. Okay. Apparently, it's all over New South Wales. Like you just Google it and it comes up on the Service New South Wales website.
I'm going to have to look this up afterwards.
Yeah. So
where I'm located, Cooranbong, if we call AAA, they take you to Wyong.
Yeah, I was going to say they take you to Wyong. I didn't think to set my mic up. You can hear me all right, but can't you?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah.
I go to the nth degree to make sure I sound good, but who cares if you... No, I'm kidding. No, I've got to try and make my voice sound really sultry and sexy because otherwise it sounds really nasal.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah, and we're in the dungeon, so we really need to sound sexy.
Yeah, that's it. Is that what that bondage is up behind you?
No, so that's the microphone you can see in front of me. And that's good old Cox and Greenfield sitting up behind me. Nah, it's good. Yeah, so welcome to the dungeon, Adrian.
Thank you. It's been a bit of a long time coming.
We've chatted a couple of times. We actually had you on the podcast earlier for a quick look at Service Mate.
Yep.
But we've been threatening to lock you up in the dungeon and tell your story for a while.
Yeah. I've been putting it off, but I thought I'd finally cave for you.
All good.
Check it out.
Yeah, so we'll put a bit of pressure on you tonight, see if we can squeeze you hard.
That's all good.
Yeah, so your last name's Wheeler.
Yep.
And you're up the road from me, literally.
Yep.
Do you come into Cooranbong at all?
I've had a couple of jobs down there, but nothing regular, like a little bit around the Morisset area. But it's funny, like I've never really pushed for work down that way and never really never not that I haven't followed up, but I've never really tried to win the work down there.
Fair enough.
I had a couple of regular jobs down there. One of them was it was like mowing in Dog Poo Alley, but I don't know what the mentality was, but I'd always rather drive. That's annoying. Always rather drive to Newcastle or Maitland than go 10 minutes down the road to Morisset, because I think what it was is if I was coming past my turnoff, like as you know, the turnoff down in the Wangi, it's one road. I was coming past that. It always felt like a chore going that extra 10 minutes, 15 minutes down the road to do those jobs. So
it really can feel like that, doesn't it? Like I've spent most of my time doing jobs in Cooranbong, Morisset, Dora Creek and Bonnells Bay.
Yeah.
And if somebody asked me to go from Bonnells Bay out to Sunshine, it's like, nah, that's too far.
Yeah, for sure.
And people listening won't understand this, right? So I live Cooranbong. It's sort of 10 minutes from Lake Macquarie. Morisset's 5 minutes from Lake Macquarie. Bonnells Bay is right on the lake, and Sunshine is just further out the peninsula from Bonnells Bay. So it's literally a straight line. It's like 15 minutes from my home to get out to Sunshine. And I'm like, no, that's too far.
But it feels like you're driving to Sydney.
Yeah. It's just,
Especially Bonnells Bay, Morisset Park, and all that sort of stuff. Like once you turn left on that road,
yeah,
it just feels like that road just goes forever. Like,
yeah. The other thing that's interesting with this area is that you get every kind of job conceivable.
yeah,
So in Cooranbong and Morisset, you've got the lower socioeconomic people that want the $25 jobs.
yeah, the mow and blow.
I've literally had one guy who was like, don't do the edges, make it cheaper.
Yeah, I was about to say the mow and blow, but they come to you sometimes and like, oh, it's a bit cheaper if you don't blow.
Yeah. Ah, boy, we could make all sorts of jokes about that, but
So,
but yeah, then you'll get the complete spectrum. Like you got properties here that are worth 1.5 to 2 mil,
yeah,
and they want it looking spectacular. Got robotic mower on the property, all those sorts of things.
yeah, and right down from like 50 square meter lawns right up to large acreages, and
Yeah.
it's quite a mixture down that way.
So Cooranbong recently has had the explosion of population with Wadigan Park,
Yeah,
and it's more than doubling the population in Cooranbong.
yeah,
Probably going to be triple or 4 times
yeah.
the population by the time they're done.
So you have 60 people in Cooranbong now. No, I joke. Listening from Cooranbong, it's a lovely place.
I grew up here.
Yeah,
So from the time I was 4 years old, we moved to Cooranbong.
yeah,
And when I moved here, it was a nice, tiny little town, rather regional. You know, anybody in Newcastle or Central Coast, they're like, where's that? That's in the sticks.
yeah,
Yeah. So I was used to it, loved it. The fact that, you know, you could ride your push bike around town and it's half farmland, half houses. And, you know, the shops in Cooranbong when I first moved here was the old Cobb & Co trading post.
yeah. Okay, wow. Yeah. Well, I actually grew up in that low economic area on the other side of the lake. So I grew up in Gateshead and Windale.
Yeah.
So
Windale.
yeah,
Famous.
yeah. So I spent the first half of my life in Gateshead, and
Yeah.
just with circumstances with my parents, they ended up losing their house, and we ended up in housing commission and stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I grew up in Windale and for my teenage years, and my parents still live there.
Yeah.
So same thing. Like I remember as a kid in Gateshead, like riding my bike everywhere, up in the bush, on jumps, like
Yep.
kids, like from, and I'm talking about from the age of 5 or 6, and there would be kids up there and that were 15 and stuff we had this little bike track, and they would all get up there on our mongooses and stuff, and
Yep.
yeah,
Well,
ride
the
bike.
local Gateshead bike shop was a mongoose dealer, so of course.
Yeah, and I didn't have a mongoose. I was like being poor. My parents couldn't really afford it, so
Yeah.
and now that I remember I got this hand-me-down bike from my uncle, and I was just like, oh man, this thing's crap. But now that I look back at it, it was I don't know if you know BMXs, but it was an Apollo.
Yeah.
So it was actually a really cool bike in the 80s and stuff, and I had it
Yeah.
through the 90s. It was black with gold rims and gold trims and all that, and
Yep.
yeah, I wish I kept that thing. It would have been worth some money, but yeah, I trashed it. But
Yeah.
same sort of thing. Like you just out, freedom, like do whatever, like
Yeah.
as long as you're home when the lights come on.
Yeah. Well, I can remember probably around 2000, 99, 2000, listening to the police scanner, and on a Friday night, Saturday night, every call was Windale this, Windale that.
Yeah, it went through a pretty bad stage. We moved in late 2000.
Okay, yeah.
I think it was. I was in year 7.
So it really was the roughest place in Newcastle to be.
Yeah, that and Hamilton South was pretty bad as well.
Yeah.
Like it's the same as anywhere you go. Like I've lived in Brisbane. Like it's even the most posh areas still have little pockets. Like
Yeah, definitely.
The hard thing with areas like Windale was it was a whole suburb like that was a majority. So and then obviously drugs and stuff get in there, and it just
Yeah.
becomes a generational thing.
Yep, definitely. There's a few suburbs around Newcastle Central Coast that are like that, where it's like, okay, there's 4 generations, 5 generations, 6 generations of people that have never had a job.
Yeah,
All they do is sit home and deal, and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
hard cycle to break, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Don't get me wrong. Some of those people are the nicest people, and they'd literally give you their last $5 so you could go get a bucket of chips at the local fish and chip shop.
Yeah,
Like, but yeah, it is a hard cycle to break, which is why I'm working my ass off. So,
yeah. Well, back in 2000, $5 would have gotten you a decent bucket of fish and chips, but
you would have got fish, scallops, everything.
nowadays it's like $20
Yeah,
and then
you
some.
get you get 6 chips in a bag, sort of thing. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yep. Yeah, you go to the wrong place around here, and it's fish and chips is a gourmet meal, and you're paying $50, $60.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So
and the less chips there are, the more gourmet it is.
yeah, yeah. And the more frozen the fish is, the more gourmet. So
Yeah, that's it.
yeah,
I know if you go any restaurant around here nowadays, they'll serve barramundi and salmon. That's sort of like your go-to for the fish meal. But if you get the chance to go up north, I went up to Cairns for my honeymoon,
yeah,
and this was back 2008
yeah,
for the second marriage, so honeymoon for then, and went up to the Daintree, and they had a little restaurant right on the Daintree that had fresh barramundi.
yeah.
I never tasted it so good.
Yeah. I've been to Cairns and Port Douglas, been to Townsville a few times. Yeah, it's so good up there. We're actually going up in July, so we've got
Yeah.
my wife's cousin's wedding in Townsville in late July, and I said, well, let's do the Cape while we're up there. So we're going up for 4 weeks.
So
So
you're doing the Cape before the wedding or after?
after,
Bugger.
so
I'll be leaving Currumbong on the 1st of July.
yeah,
I'll be leaving the Daintree on the 7th of July or the 6th of July, I think. I have to double check that.
yeah,
Doing 2 weeks from there back to Cairns, get back on the back to Currumbong on the 21st, I think it is.
yeah. Well, the wedding's the 22nd, so we get into Townsville on the 17th.
Yeah.
We're taking a few days to travel up because we got like my in-laws and like wife's auntie and stuff like that traveling up with us. So we're traveling
Nice.
up through the countryway this time, and
Yeah.
I think we're taking about 3 days to get there, and then
Yep.
spend a week in Townsville pretty much. So we get spent from the Wednesday through to the Monday, and then we head up the Cape.
So when you go the countryway up to Townsville,
Yeah,
what I've done previously, because I've done a few trips up to North Queensland, sort of go up through Gundawindi,
yeah,
and then from Gundawindi through Miles through to Emerald,
yeah. That's
and then from
where we're
Emerald up to Charters Towers,
Yeah,
and then
that's
from
exactly
Charters back out to the coast.
Yeah, that's exactly where we're going. So I think this first stop's I think it's Narara or something like that. Like it's only 3 or 4 hours. The first stop, got a little camp up there. We're going to stay out, and then man, I love this stuff. Like I reckon planning these road trips is sometimes just as fun as the actual road trip, doing the research and
Oh, it's beautiful. And some of those trips, like that direction I said, if you go through Miles, when you get out the other side of Miles, there's a development road that you go through. Instead of staying on the main road, you go through this development road, and it's more direct to go through from there towards Emerald.
Yeah.
And halfway along this development road, they've got a memorial to I think there's 3 people that died in a truck accident. And what happened is this truck had fertilizer on it that blew up.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And you'll see the bull bar sitting there and this big memorial. And it's like you read it, and the truck blew up so bad with this explosion. It made a crater in the road. It blew the bull bar like a kilometre away from where the truck was, all sorts of nasty stuff. So it's an interesting trip through these places.
Yeah, scary stuff, which is part of the reason why I'm going to start having less and less chemicals around my house, especially with my kids getting a bit older. So
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, but yeah.
Well, we should bring this back around to talking about business, unless you want to talk about motorbikes first.
I'm not really into motorbikes.
Ah, man.
So
We can't be friends.
no, I enjoy him, and I wish I did get him into him more as a kid. But
Yeah.
growing up where I grew up, motorbike riding was sort of frowned upon because we were usually doing it through the streets at 10 o'clock at night.
There was certainly, and chances are, if there was a motorbike riding through the streets of Windale, it was a stolen bike too.
Yeah, I don't know. I can incriminate myself. Nah,
No.
no, I was never into that. But like I have ridden them, but yeah, just I don't know. I never got into them, so
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's not for everyone, but there's got to be a couple of cool kids around. So
yeah, that's it. That's it. I'd rather be fishing.
you can't knock it.
Uh,
I love fishing, but it doesn't love me. Every time I've been fishing, regardless of who I've gone with, I can teach somebody else how to fish. They'll catch more fish than I will.
Yeah.
Guarantee you.
Well, they say if you can't do, teach. So
yeah. Well, I can take you out in Lake Macquarie. I don't actually have a boat, but I've been out in a boat in Lake Macquarie plenty of times. I'd take you out there and show you a couple of spots where you will catch some really good fish.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably know them all.
great fishing on the lake. So everyone's got that X spot. Like, do not tell anyone else if I take you here, sort of thing. And
yep,
there's so much structure out there, and we could talk an hour about Lake Macquarie, but
yeah, I've got probably half a dozen spots on the lake that are worth going and visiting, and then that's if you're in a boat. Then there's places you go where if you're not in a boat, you can still have a great fish.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's private tales for another day.
Yeah, that's it.
We can't share that publicly.
No.
No way. But
too many people immigrate into our beautiful area as it is. So,
but while we're on the topic of fishing, I'm going to do a little bit of fishing right now. I'm going to see if Ben Reese listens to me still, because Ben Reese did an interview with me going back quite a while now, and he said, when you're coming up to Cairns, give us a bell. We'll catch up. He said he's going to take me out fishing. So if you're listening, Ben, give me a buzz. We'll see if that lure catches him.
Yeah. If you can't catch fish in Cairns, you've got something wrong with you.
It's a great spot for it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Beautiful. I get people asking all the time if battery is up to the task for everyday commercial use, and there are still plenty of people who argue that battery is simply not a good solution for contractors. So let's cover a couple of these topics. 1. Not every lawn and garden business will get a benefit from using battery tools. You should ask the questions first about what sort of tasks they will be required to do, and I'm happy to answer some of these questions about what tasks are good for battery tools and which tasks should be left for petrol tools. 2. What benefits do you want from battery tools? Some businesses will experience a greater return on investment with battery tools. This can be measured financially, but sometimes needs to be measured in reduced risks and problems too. Work health safety benefits are measurable when talking about no exhaust burns, reduced noise, and the noise being further away from the operator's ears. Vibrations in your dominant and non-dominant arm will most likely be less with battery tools, but a change in the balance of tools or poorly maintained tools can result in more vibrations to your forward-reaching arm, regardless of if it's battery or petrol power. So, some easy tools to see the benefit with battery are hedge trimmers and handheld blowers, because the list of pros and cons seriously favour the battery tool over petrol. But whippersnippers and mowers often have the pendulum where the pros disappear as the runtime requirements increase or the load increases due to long grass. If you run one battery platform, you might find you initially needed 2 or 3 batteries, and now with a whippersnipper and a mower, you require 10 or even 20 batteries to get through a whole day. This can be the line in the sand for many businesses, but one way to avoid this is to charge on the go, or bring your charger to the properties where you spend long periods of time. I've been using a number of Ego tools now, and Ego is a dedicated battery power brand. When I need commercial battery solutions, Ego has a tool and battery and charging options that allow me to focus on getting the work done, and I don't have to worry about my day. 2 staff and 6 batteries keep me out of trouble and busy working. Yeah, so Adrian, how long have you been in business now?
I started the business in about October 2018.
Yeah, okay.
Started out as a sole trader, and
so 5.5 years ago.
Yeah, so I did that a couple of years, and then transferred over to a company, and so
now, if I understand correctly, you've done some things really well in business. When I've talked to you previously, I'm like, oh man, I could learn a thing or two from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah and no. Like
Well, we all learn from making mistakes too, right? But we can cover
100%.
that.
100%. So I feel like I've got my strong points with networking
Yeah,
and yeah, like a lot of good stuff's just fallen in my lap.
yeah,
Had my struggles over the years as well, still struggling. A lot of that's got to do with like being unmedicated for my ADHD and stuff. So, but
yeah,
yeah, like I find this year is sort of I had a pretty bad year last year. Just didn't want to do it anymore, and didn't
yeah.
have didn't have the passion, and was sort of just doing it out of habit. And but yeah, like I found since the Christmas break, it's really turned around, and whether that's to do with being back on medication and being a bit more focused and organized, but yeah, it's definitely starting to turn around.
There's a bunch of things that have happened in that time, and I'm a big advocate for people having the right mindset. And it sounds like you've had to pull a bunch of things together to get your mindset where it needs to be, so you're on your A game.
Yeah,
But the other thing that's happened is the weather shift. So we went from a really dry spell into a summer that is fueled with grass growth, and it's been insane, really, hasn't it? It's like,
depends where he is. So I
yeah,
find like I've got a property out at Lovedale, up in the Hunter Valley.
yeah,
There's like a mini little golf course I've spoken to you about, and it's been really affected by the drought already. It's got cracks in the earth, and
yeah,
dams are nearly empty already, um, and like even what day was it? Thursday. Like I'm due to catch up with my accountant, and I missed him on Wednesday, but he messaged me and said, "Oh, have you rained out on Thursday? Come see me." And
yeah.
this was Thursday morning, and I looked up at the sky, and I'm like, "Rain? What are you talking about?" Like,
Okay.
so it was overcast, but there was definitely no water up there. But
Yeah,
yeah, so I find once you get over that mountain range, yeah, it's definitely a lot drier out there, and there's got to be some people doing it tough that have started their business over the last few years and found it really easy to pick up work, because I think it's definitely got to start slowing up like it was
yeah.
pre 2020.
Yeah, I think you're right. But the geography around Newcastle is really interesting. All the way up the east coast is interesting, right? Because unlike the West Australians, where they're flat and desert and they have to not just pray for rain, but they have to dig wells to water their lawns,
Yeah,
we got the Great Divide.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
Great Divide goes pretty much all the way up the east coast. And I'm
yeah,
looking at a map that's right behind you while I'm talking about this.
yeah.
I'm going, yeah, I can sort of see it there.
Oh, it's about to fall off, but my little scratch. So,
But yeah, the Great Divide is, I mean, people overseas, even New Zealand, will laugh at our mountain ranges and say that's not a mountain range. But it's enough for the rainfall that comes in from the coast. When it hits the Great Divide, it drops all of its rain on the east coast instead of getting over that. And so, what you're talking about there, I live in Currambong, you live in Wangi. We're on the east coast, but we are right up against that mountain range. And I'm more so than you are.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
literally, between you and me, I've seen days where the clouds will come over from the ocean, they hit the mountain range, and they dump 20 or 30 mils on Currambong, and then Dora Creek and Wangi and places like that, they get nothing.
nothing. Yeah, yeah,
And
for
then
sure.
the other way it goes is you get a storm that comes across from the west, and it'll dump everything on Maitland, Lovedale, and Cessnock and those places, and then it blows straight over the top of us because as it goes over the mountain range, it's dumped everything on the west side and
Yeah,
has nothing to dump on us.
yeah. There's no big water source out there for it to pick up.
So
So
it's really,
even where we are, like I remember is like always growing up in Lake Macquarie, like hardly ever been on water restrictions.
yeah,
And then you go down to the Central Coast, and they were on water restrictions, like
yep,
Maitland water restrictions,
yeah.
and it's just we're just in this little pocket, and I don't know if it's got to do with the lake, like it's such a big, or it's the biggest southern saltwater lake in the southern hemisphere, but
Yeah,
I find even like I'll ring my parents if it's raining over here and say, "Is it raining on that side of the lake?"
yeah,
No. All right, perfect. And I'll shift stuff around and go over and do all my work on that side of the lake. Like,
yeah. So one of the things that affects that water restrictions is where we get our water from. So where we are, we get water from Grahamstown Dam,
yeah, yeah,
and they've
lucky.
they've got a underground water supply there. I can't remember what they call it, but it's massive amount of underground water there.
Yeah.
So that supply lasts a lot longer than what they've got on the Central Coast. They've got a dam up around Mangrove Mountain there. And
and even where the Central Coast build their dam, it's halfway up the mountain.
yeah. So yeah, their water supply does not cope, and it's going to be interesting because they've had massive population growth over the last 5 years too.
Yeah.
So when we get the next drought, it'll be interesting to see how quickly they hit water restrictions.
Yeah, well, I don't know. The drought's already here, definitely. We're at the start of it.
This is the thing, right? I've noticed the same thing you're noticing. You look around, and we had like 20 mils of rain last night.
Yeah.
And then last week we had 20 mils of rain or 15 mils of rain, 10 mils of rain here and there. But you look at the ground, and most places, if you move the grass and you stick your finger into the dirt, it's dry as a bone.
Yeah, the ground's so hydrophobic. Like a lot of people get into you need to soak the ground and all this sort of stuff. Like at the end of the day, when the ground gets that water, and like I'm not a scientist or anything like that for sure, but when the ground gets soaked and then we get a 40-degree day the next day, it gets baked and it's rock hard.
Yeah.
And the ground's definitely very hydrophobic at the moment. Like you see so much runoff. And as you were saying about 20 mil last night, you go into Newcastle last night and it was flooded.
Yeah. And where I was working this morning down the Central Coast, it's like there's water lying on the ground in places and the ground's cracked open in other places.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was driving home from the hospital about 5:30 this morning and it was pouring down.
Yeah.
And then when I woke up this morning, after that, it's blue skies and sunny. So
yeah, well, I woke up during the night and off the top of my head, it was probably about 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Bucketing down.
Yeah.
Got up in the morning to get ready for work, and I get up about 5:15.
Yeah.
No rain. Dry as.
Yeah. So it's a bit of crazy times. I think we're in that shift, but for sure.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't be surprised if we go into a couple of years of drought at the moment, or who knows? Like they were predicting this season was going to be really dry, and we've had a lot more rain than expected. But like you say, the ground's hydrophobic, and it really does take a decent amount of rain in one go to sort of break that hydrophobic soil so that it will start holding water again.
Yeah, and a lot of people are relying on wetting agents and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if you put a wetting agent on a hydrophobic ground, it's just got to run across the top with the water. You can get some stuff to actually penetrate the soil and make the water drive down into the soil. And
so a penetrant.
Yeah. So
wetting agents and penetrants are different in the way they operate.
But they work really well together.
Yes.
So don't use one or the other. Use them both together, and that way the penetrant will take the wetting agent down into that 50 mil. And
so there's commercial products that you should buy if you're doing this commercially. But a lot of people will go, oh, yeah, I can use dishwashing liquid. That'll be a fairly good wetting agent.
Yeah.
Which, it works, but it's not the same as using a commercial product.
No. Like at the end of the day, if you're using soap all the time on your grass, it's not real good for the soil.
Yeah. Well, it's going to change the pH level quite a bit.
Yeah. So it's like that old, I can remember as a kid, like you wash your car on the front lawn and all the crickets and the birds come out and
all the army grubs come out.
Well, I didn't know there were army grubs back then, but
boy.
Speaking of army grubs, I think we're in for another bad year of them.
Yeah, well, I've noticed the black beetles have been in plague proportions in a few places around here.
Yeah, see, like normally, I feel normally by now the black beetle's starting to slow up after Christmas, and we're sort of getting ready for the army worm, army grub, and I find that the army grub this year's come a bit early, and the black beetle's still hanging around. So
yeah, it's interesting because I would say that black beetles seem to like that drier. When it stays dry and warm until about 9 p.m. at night, the black beetles really thrive on that.
Yeah.
Whereas the army grubs, they really like it when you've had some decent rain and then you get a bit of heat straight after the rain. The army grubs are like, oh, thank you very much. I'll have that.
Yeah, fresh grow.
Start screwing the roots in your lawn and off they go.
Yeah. So, but yeah, if no one's doing it yet, I definitely suggest getting some aceleprant out. And
Yeah, I've not used a Celeprint ever. I've used other treatments for army grubs, but I've seriously been thinking, I need to be treating some areas for army grubs, or just doing the 6 month Celeprint treatments.
I was about to say you should be using aceleprant as a preventative.
Yeah,
So when I was doing my time on the golf course, like everything was taught preventative, preventative, preventative. So we, yeah, basically my super that trained me was like we prevent and prepare the grass so we can absolutely treat it like garbage. So slash it down as short as possible and try and kill it basically. So
So two questions for you. One, a Celeprint comes in a granular.
yeah, granular or a liquid.
Yeah, so the granular is your go-to for your preventative.
Yeah, they both work.
They
So
both do.
it's the same product.
I would have said, the granular for preventative and the liquid if you want a more fast-acting treatment.
Yeah, it's the same. I was talking to the reps about this the other day because I've since doing this business, I've always used the granular. On the golf course, we use the liquid just because it's easier to apply.
Yeah, you can throw it in with whatever else you're doing.
Yeah, and not just that, you haven't got granulars sitting on the greens, like.
Yep,
Um,
fair.
but yeah, it's the same product. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So the
So
other question I had for you,
yeah,
your time on the golf course,
yeah,
that was before you started your own business.
yeah,
So
yeah. So that was
how
in
much
Brisbane.
how much time did you spend training and learning from the golf course work?
So I did 6 months roughly on a little par nine, which got me into the trade. But I didn't have anyone around me to train me.
Yeah.
It was a little links course, like little goat track sort of thing, and it was good because it means I got to do everything, and um, I had they didn't really have any sort of systems set up, and we had a big golf course next door, and
Yeah,
one of
okay.
the I think it was a super from there used to come across and show me a few things, and then a few of the reps showed me a few things, and then I was talking to not TAFE teacher up there. We had a guy that would come to the course and teach us the little theory side. And I was talking to him and I'm like, man, I need to get out. Like, I've just had a kid. Like, I'm getting paid $16 an hour. Like, I need to go somewhere where I'm going to learn. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time. Like, I may as well go do something else.
Yep.
And he got me onto a really nice course that we had a crew. And I think I did about just over 2 years there.
Right.
And doing a greenkeeping apprenticeship at both places. And yeah, I was basically across everything in the practical side, the theory side. Yeah, I don't know. Me and the other mature age apprentice were both the same. We hated theory, so we'd only do it when the teacher was there, sort of thing. But
Yeah.
so we didn't get the theory done. I was on course to sort of finish it probably 6 months early anyway.
Yeah, okay.
But then, yeah, by that stage, we'd had our second kid, and my wife was finishing up her maternity leave, and we'd already decided that we wanted to come back to Newcastle, where both our parents lived, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was sort of it didn't line up that I'd got to finish my trade, so I'm just short of my trade, but yeah.
So you've got all of the practical knowledge, but the actual certificate didn't fit it.
Yeah, I got enough practical knowledge to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you know, horticulture, greenkeeping, all this whole trade, you never stop learning.
Yeah, that's it.
So I speak to guys that have been in it for 30 years, and I've taught them stuff that they didn't know, sort of thing, and vice versa. Like,
Yep.
I had guys that are just been like lawnies, not greenkeepers, and
Yeah.
they've taught me stuff, sort of thing. So you never
Yeah.
stop learning.
Yeah. Well, I've never done a trade in this at all.
Yeah.
So my education was in computers.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I've done a few different things, so I've got a wealth of experience from different fields.
Yeah.
And the most learning I have done is talking to people on the podcast. So I've interviewed 130 plus people now, and that's been a massive training experience for me.
You'd be one of the most experienced men in Australia now. Lawns.
I've got some knowledge, but it probably makes me more dangerous than helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nah.
But yeah, you definitely keep learning, and
Yeah.
obviously different areas like Brisbane's slightly different from here. It's pretty close climate-wise, but it's
Yeah.
slightly different. And then you go further south, and the grasses change again. So most of my trade was all done on blue cooch and 328 for the greens.
Yeah.
And then when I come down here, I did a few weeks at Toronto Golf Course helping out there when one of the guys went down
Okay.
sick.
Yeah.
And they were sort of bent grass greens, and yeah,
I've heard a few things about Toronto Golf Course.
yeah,
You got to say it right. You can't say Toronto. It's
Toronto.
Toronto. But yeah, it's got a bit of a reputation, I believe.
Yeah, it's coming. I feel like it's on the up. Like once Morisset closed down, a lot of the I think a lot of the guys from down there come up. So
Yes.
I don't really play golf, so I'm not really across it completely. But
Yeah.
talking to a few of the reps and a few of the other greenkeepers, I know there's been a bit of shift around Newcastle, and certain guys from some courses have they've all sort of, a lot of them are rotated around, which I think is a good thing. Like,
Yep.
otherwise you get stale.
I've never played golf myself, and I mean never. I've played putt-putt. But
Yeah.
so I don't understand golf. That's
Yeah.
just it's a foreign thing for me. And my excuse whenever anyone says, "Oh, go on, you can play," I'm like, well, I'm left-handed. So whenever somebody says come and play, I'm like, oh, if you got left-handed clubs,
So yeah, I don't mind golf. I just, once again, I'd rather be fishing or out camping or traveling or something like that. So
yeah, yeah. Well, I fire some shots at Toronto Golf Course. Talking to my friends that do play golf, there are friends that will go to Toronto to play. And a lot of them do that because it's cheaper than going elsewhere, because it's not quite as good as some of the other golf courses. And
yeah,
one friend in particular, he's like, no, I won't play Toronto. I will go down to Wyong.
yeah,
Heaps
yeah.
better.
Wyong's really nice.
Yeah.
So even I got a chance to play up at what was it? I can't remember. One of the ones up at Cessnock Lovedale, and
Okay.
last year for Lifeline in the charity thing, we sponsored a hole, and I might have been before, but yeah, that was unreal. Like seeing that course, like one of the higher end courses.
Yeah. Yeah. They've got some nice courses out there, because you're talking out the back of Cessnock and Lovedale, you're talking wine country.
Yeah, the vineyards. Yeah,
Yeah. So there's money out there.
yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So you've had 5.5 years in business yourself since you came back from Brisbane.
Yeah.
Did you go straight into it when you got back here?
I started working for another company. That was part of the stipulation of us moving down, was for me to have a job to walk straight into. Um, and I had a chance to work with a pretty decent, like a large size company in sort of the Newcastle area, and had an interview, and just I wasn't feeling it. And then another company actually offered me to let me finish my trade and sort of advance up to sort of run the lawn side of their business,
Right.
while another guy ran the gardening side. And I don't know, I've always liked that leadership stuff through sport and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I sort of jumped at that opportunity, and it didn't really go well. Like there was a few issues there, and yeah, I was sort of doing that, and telling them a few things that they could be doing, like spraying lawns for simple
Yeah.
broadleaf spraying,
Yep.
and I sort of, it was around my birthday, which is in August. We moved back in July, and yeah, around my birthday, I sprayed pretty much their 3 weeks worth of lawns in 4.5 days, and they made the same money as what they would have over the 3 weeks for doing the lawns. And I was sort of, my birthday was a Friday, and I finished up at Maitland. I said to my wife, "Oh, meet me up there, and we'll go for lunch for my birthday. Like I'm done for the week." And we
Yeah.
went for lunch, and the next week I got a pay slip with 4.5 days on it, and I was just like, "Oh, okay." And then it sort of made me step back and have a look, and being like, "Well, I can do this myself." Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, then a few other things happened, and they ended up laying me off over something little, and
Yep.
I was like, "Well, I'm going to go do this myself," and I jumped on it. jumped on Airtasker, and when we're actually in Brisbane, me and one of my mates said, "Oh, we could be mowing some lawns on the side," and we were just doing them off Airtasker,
Yeah.
and we came up with a cutting edge lawn specialist logo,
Oh, yeah.
or he actually came up with it, and we're doing that. So I just said to him, "Do you care if I use the logo down here? I'm going to run my own business," and he said, "No, go for it." So
Yeah.
I started doing that. The other company actually offered me a job back, and we had a massive meeting, and there was all these stipulations if I come back, which they did meet, and then yeah, it wasn't for me. So
Yeah. Once the trust is gone, the trust is gone, right?
yeah, and that was it. That was the biggest thing, and it sort of put a wedge between the guy I was working with. Like he'd been doing it for probably 12 months, and he was a
Yeah.
butcher by trade, and
Right.
yeah, like I sort of come in, and I think there was a little bit of a power trip there at the beginning, and then
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, the owners of the company ended up. We were going to Thailand for our honeymoon in October, and I said to him when I get back, I'm done.
Yeah.
Then they ended up letting me go, let me leave about a week before we went to Thailand, and yeah, when I got back, I had a couple of regular clients that I was still doing because I started doing them with that business instead of just saying, "Oh, I've got a job now, I can't do it." Like I just said, "Well, I've got a few clients, I'm going to bring them in,"
Yeah.
and I basically just took them back and
Yep.
started from there and hit the ground running.
Very good. So that gave you a good basis to get started with your own business.
Yeah,
But if it's anything like me when I started, and different backgrounds, but when I started with about 20 residential customers, and in end of March, beginning of April, so had a month of grass to cut, and then it went dormant because of winter.
yeah, yeah,
So if you got a few clients to get you started, you want to ramp them up as quickly as possible so that you fill your books and get busy.
yeah,
And you try and balance that between getting busy as quickly as you can and making sure the clients are quality clients and not just cheap and nasty.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I was when I was in high school, we did a bit of turf laying down for Yarramalong Turf, and
Oh yeah,
as like a summer job. So when I started out, I was advertising for turf laying, and
yep,
I'm sort of like at that age. What's that? I would have been 31. So a lot of our group around of it were buying houses or buying their second houses and
yeah,
landscaping. Like they were all at that new house stage
yeah,
instead of buying old houses. And so I was lucky. I picked up a lot of turfing jobs and was able to get some labourers and stuff like that I could rely on. And then yeah, one of the guys I knew through basketball, him and his business partner had a pretty big contract, and they were running a lawn company and got me in subbing for them doing their residential lawns. So that all
nice,
happened within 2 months. So
yeah,
yeah, we pretty much hit the ground running, and
yeah, awesome,
just yeah, every time like those contracts have sort of come to an end because of like how much I was getting paid or whatever. It was just like the next contract had already sort of half fallen into place, so I was pretty lucky.
yeah, that's sweet.
Yeah,
And it's a case of going from residential jobs where you don't have a contract, you sort of got a verbal agreement that you're going to turn up for fortnightly cuts for 20 cuts a year. That's roughly what a residential agreement looks like,
yeah,
to a commercial contract where the contract is still not worth a whole lot, but it's better than a residential handshake agreement in the sense that the expectations are a little bit clearer, and the rate that you're charging is probably going to be a little bit better, or it's going to be more consistent
yeah,
all year round. So residential, you know that once you get to April, end of April, there's not a lot to do.
yeah.
You can't really do renos coming into winter.
No,
You can't really offer them any extra treatments coming into winter. You might get away with a celloprene treatment at that point in time, or a late fertilizer if you're really good. And then you're really talking 2 or 3 cuts between beginning of May and September, which is when you start heading back towards fortnightly cuts.
yeah,
So yeah, the commercial contracts that you're talking about there, that really helps to keep your cash flow more even, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I've had a bit of I actually pulled out of residential 12 months ago. I had one lady that was like, if you leave me, I'll be devastated, sort of thing. So, and I wasn't even making money off her. She was at that stage. I had a few guys working for me, and um, so it was costing me more to do her place than what it was not to do it, basically. And
Yeah, okay.
so we pulled away from residential, and there was pretty much only her. I think she was the only one I was still doing. And
Yeah,
then it was probably bad timing. Like I should have done it 12 months earlier when I was still motivated in that. And like I was sort of advised by a few people, and I'd already started shifting away from it. And then I pulled the pin on it, and it sort of happened at the same time. I'd sort of lost that bit of passion for the business. And
yep,
so uh, that that was sort of the part of that 12 months sort of spiral. And then at the end of the last year, I was like, I'm going to have to go back into residential just for that
yeah.
week to week cash flow.
Yeah,
So
I can see why you're saying that.
yeah,
So
and
the difference in cash flow when you're talking residential versus commercial will give you cash flow all year round,
yeah,
whereas you might wait once you've done a job commercially, you might wait till the end of the month to get paid. Most of them are going to be monthly payments.
yeah,
Whereas your residential, you get paid on completion, or if you're a bit slack with your bookwork on residential, you might get paid a week later or 2 weeks later. But
yeah, yeah,
typically, you're getting paid on completion for residential.
yeah, yeah.
So
So
yeah,
yeah, the biggest thing was like if I like obviously there's a market there to go full commercial, and down the track that's still what I want to focus on. But
yep,
the biggest thing is you got to have that financial backing, and I just I haven't been good with money over the 5 years, so in a bit of
yeah,
debt. And,
yep,
um, yeah, so that's the biggest thing. Like I sort of pulled away, and there was no profit margins in my business because I wasn't motivated enough to go chase new work, and
yeah,
so I found it easier to just go, well, instead of suffering for another 18 months while we try and pick up this commercial stuff, let's go pick up some resis just to fill the blanks and
yep,
go from there.
yeah. Fair enough. And I
So
think that's something most small businesses go through. The hurdles I see small businesses go through is you start out solo, and you're literally living from paycheck to paycheck or week to week or month to month. And yeah, so going from residential's been weekly to real estate agents and commercials being monthly. I found the best thing to do was have a mix of both, because that sort of made sure I had a consistent cash flow from the residential jobs, and then the monthly cash flow comes in, which would complement it nicely.
yeah, so you're using your residential to pay your wages and week to week costs, and then
Yeah.
your monthly stuff. So that's where you're paying your loans and etc.
Yeah. Yeah. And to start with, it literally looked like that.
Yeah,
What I've done with my accountants, big shout out to Prosper Financial. I don't mind referring people to them, but the reason I bring them up is when I started using them as my accountants, they sat down with me and they talked through my profit margins or lack thereof, and they're like, what are you living on?"
yeah, yeah,
And they said, "You're doing really well, but what are you living on?"
yeah,
And at that point in time, I started a system with separate bank accounts, and I've just recently been listening to a book called Profit First, which talks about having the separate accounts to manage your cash flow really well.
yeah,
And I'm like, my accountants basically use that same method. We didn't talk about having a bank account just for profit, but we talked about having bank accounts to pay the different things out of. So there's always enough money going into the account to pay for taxes, GST, as well as personal tax. All those taxes go in one account, and that's done. Every payment I get comes in. I've got money put aside for it. And then, for expenses and for buying new equipment, because that's something you have to forecast for. You can't just go, I'll just buy a $30,000 mower or a $60,000 vehicle. Where's the money come from?
yeah,
Whereas if you start forecasting for it, then even if you don't have 60 grand sitting there for a brand new, you say you've got a D-Max.
yeah,
Yeah, if you don't have 60 grand sitting there to buy a brand new D-Max, if you're putting the right amount of money aside, you can go to the bank and you can say, look, this is how much money I put aside every week or every month to be able to pay for the loan for that vehicle.
100%. And even if you're not putting some of that money down as deposit, you're already used to putting that $1,000 away a month for that vehicle.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's not a shock to the system. I had a business coach for about 6 months,
Yeah.
sort of leading into last year, and he uses the same system, 7 accounts.
Okay.
I've actually put someone that's pretty close to me on to take over my finances.
Nice.
We're still in the process of setting all that up.
Yeah.
So literally the only thing I'll be allowed to do is put fuel in the car, and everything else she has to okay.
I've created Aussie Lawn Stars to give you professional help free. And you'll also find Lawn Care Skull Sessions and the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast doing the same thing. On Facebook, you can look up the Lawn Mowing Contractors Australia group or the Australian Professional Contractors group. And if you want help that is personalised and takes you a little bit further, then you should look up Prez Madley. He offers personal coaching, business coaching, and corporate coaching. Email him on thinktankcoaching@outlook.com. You could also book an appointment with my accountants, Prosper Financial, on 0249 77 if you need help getting your business and bookkeeping in order.
And I
Yeah.
actually found that out from one of the builders around here. He told me, he's like, I was the same, like just
Yeah.
another one of those tradies that were doing everything he can to not pay the tax man, basically. And
Yeah.
and I mean doing that legally, like buying
Yeah.
cars and buying what he has to buy.
Yep.
And he said he was bad with that side of things, and he paid someone to do that side of things for him and just basically pay him a wage.
Yeah.
And now he's huge. He's one of the biggest builders in Lake Macquarie. Like works for the council, like all that sort of stuff. And he goes,
Yep.
and I've known that for 5 years. That's the admin and the money side's always been my weak point. But I've always looked at it and gone, well, why would I pay someone to do that when I can pay someone to go and mow more lawns and bring more money in? And
Yeah.
it's been a bit of downward spiral. So it's going to take me a few years to sort of get back on track and
Yeah.
turn it all around. But
Yeah. So I guess what you're talking about there, because people that haven't looked at this system, they won't understand what you're talking about very clearly.
Yeah.
And I'm going through the book called Profit First at the moment. Now, I'm being curious as to what the 7 bank accounts are that you refer to, because the Profit First method, I think, has 5 accounts. I've got 4 accounts.
Yeah.
And so when you start breaking it down into those different categories, it's really interesting. But the key thing is that when you start doing this, what you stop doing is going, there's $10,000 in my bank account. I should go and buy a new Apple Watch, and I should go and buy a new iPhone, and I should go and buy a new MacBook.
Yeah.
Sorry for Android losers, you suck. But, the point is,
Yeah.
you start spending the money when it's there, when you see it all in one bank account. But if you go, oh, well, there's $10,000 in my tax account, that's not for me to spend.
Yeah. 100%.
And if I spend it, I'm actually doing myself a massive disservice. I'm creating debt.
100%.
That's the worst place to create debt, is to the tax man.
That would be and I tell anyone of my mates that are going into business now, I'm like, go and create more than one account.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't just have a bank account, because I was told to do a savings account, and like, I don't know, it never went in there. Like, and if it did go in there, it was like, oh, well, we need another whippersnipper. I'll pull it out and go and buy another whippersnipper. Where if it's actually labeled tax account, you know that that's not your money.
So do you remember what all of the 7 accounts are for? Can we?
Nah, I know there was your general spending account.
Yep.
There was your wages.
Yep.
There was your super and tax.
Yep.
There was your profit account. So you actually had a profit account, and you probably work off that, where you pay 10% or whatever it is into that account for everything. I can't remember.
Sounds very similar. It's just that you're breaking some of those topics or categories down into subcategories a little bit to get 7. Because I think with the Profit First, your first account is your profit account. Then you've got your income account, which is where anything that comes in goes into that. And then you've got your general expenses account, which is where you spend from. And then you start putting money into those separate pockets for tax and various different things. So they come up with 5 that keeps it fairly easy for you to go, all right, there's a percentage number there that I need to tickle the percentage until it works well for me.
Yeah, well, I think with this this lady that's doing the stuff for me, well, I think we're going to work off 3 or 4 accounts, but
Okay.
the biggest part of that is like she's actually, and it's lucky, like it's someone I've known for years, and is not family, but basically like their family is basically part of our family, like so.
So you've got a level of trust.
Yeah, she's got to take control of it. So, which has been the hardest thing for me, like, is finding that person that I can trust to do that. Like,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of people like they have a husband wife combination, but my wife works full time, like doing her own. She's got her own career, and
Yeah. Same.
her career is her career, and my business is my business, and yeah.
Yeah, my wife's occasionally said, "Oh, do you want me to help out?" When she knows I'm really busy. Do you want me to do your bookwork? And I'm like, "Oh, let me show you," because I know she'll say no. Let me show you just a little bit of what's involved in doing that. And it's like, no, that's like she's a smart person, smarter than me.
Yeah, yeah,
But when it comes to doing that, it's like, no, I don't want to consume my time with trying to learn that very complicated system.
yeah. Oh, not just that. Like they're working 40 hours a week themselves. Like
Yeah, that's right.
if they wanted to do 60, 70 hours a week like we silly folk do, they'd go and run their own business. Like
Yeah. So you've mentioned a couple of times that your ADHD affects you a fair bit.
yeah,
And talking to other people through the last 2.5 years of podcasting, there's a lot of people, and I would say most people who are really good at lawn mowing are good at a technical skill, and that puts them on that autistic spectrum, ADHD or Asperger's, a bunch of different names and labels that you can come up with that all sit somewhere in that spectrum where you're able to apply yourself and excel at a technical specialty. Like I'm really good at cutting grass. I'm really good at understanding all of the treatment options. I'm really good at helping people diagnose and come up with solutions and things like that.
Yeah.
But most people start to struggle when it comes to social etiquette or time management or system management.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's so many. So they've actually taken ADHD, and I don't know everything about it, but they've taken it actually. I remember as a kid, it was its own separate thing. Like I don't remember anyone really being autistic or anything like that when I was a kid, but ADHD was around.
Yeah.
And then I remember I was a swim teacher for a few years, and I remember parents talking to me about like the kids being ADHD and it's part of the spectrum and all that. But
Yeah.
once I got back into it, they've actually pulled ADHD. It's not part of the autistic and autism spectrum, but that's what I've been told. I may be wrong, but that's what I've been told, and it's its own thing. And there's so many different versions of ADHD. Like I remember as a kid, it was either you had ADD, which was more what I had, like couldn't concentrate in class, all that sort of stuff, or you had ADHD, which was you couldn't sit still, hyperactive, and you had tendencies of both. But the biggest thing I find is most people that I know that have got ADHD work better under chaos. So, which is why they have messy rooms. Like if you see my shed, you'd probably cry. Like
mine's the same.
Yeah,
it's just bigger.
I doubt it. But yeah, like so they work better under chaos. Like they work better under stress, which is why I always found that when we did like landscaping jobs, like once that deadline was coming up, those last few days, I got more done in those 3 days than I did the 3 weeks leading up to it. Like because all of a sudden I was like, we need to be doing this, we need to be doing that, and like where before that I'm like, yeah, let's do this, and sort of not dragged my feet, but just didn't have that urgency.
So in that sense, a residential lawn run is much easier for you to manage than a larger scale landscape job, because a residential lawn, you turn up, you do it, you move on to the next one, and you go, okay, I've got to get through 8 of those a day or 5 of those a day or 10 of those a day, and 50 of them a week.
Yeah, 100%.
Whereas that landscaping job, it's like, oh, I know it's going to take me a week to do, but like you say, you might spend 3 weeks on the and then go, oh, it's due on Friday this week. I need to get that sorted.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is procrastinating. So if you're just going there to mow a lawn,
there's not much procrastination.
where and the procrastinating on the lawn is like you're looking for weeds, you're looking for problems that are with the lawn while you're mowing instead of
Yeah.
concentrating on, like, I don't know. I don't really need to look at the mower to know that I'm doing a fairly straight line, but
Yeah.
I know some people, like, they need to focus because they want that line dead straight, where I'm more like, at the end of the day, we're using rotary mowers. You're not going to, the lines aren't going to be there in an hour.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm more concentrating on having that even lawn, but I'm looking at weeds, like I'm looking at problems around, and that gave me that chance to then say, hey, like you need a broadleaf spray or you need some fertilizer, and
Yeah.
so yeah,
I've
and then
found,
as you were saying with the landscaping, it was like we'd be doing the irrigation. I'm like, oh, we need to start like doing this. We need to start, and all of a sudden you had all these little half jobs going around everywhere, and
yeah.
yeah, so. But I like the challenge of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
I think it's I I get bored real easy, so I find with the residential lawns I get bored of it real quickly.
Yeah.
Where with the bigger sites, like it's constantly you're just constantly busy and you don't get a chance to procrastinate.
Yep.
So
Yeah, because there's always more work to do.
yeah, so I think it goes both ways a little bit with that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, that can get discouraging though on the big site where you've always got more work to do. It can be a little bit discouraging because you don't get that job satisfaction of going, that's
yeah,
done and looks great.
yeah, yeah,
And I've been working through that issue at the moment with having an employee working with me and go back over the work and go, oh, well, let's just make sure that area is complete before you move on to the next area.
yeah,
And it's a tough balancing act when you're doing commercial work because you're there for a whole day or all the time
yeah,
to go, you know what, you need to take rests. You can't whippersnip for 8 hours or 10 hours in a row. You need to do some whippersnipping, then do some mowing, then grab the blade edger because that's a massive work health safety benefit. If you can do some flat edges with a whippersnipper but some vertical edges with a blade edger, that gives you a different body position, gives your body a rest from doing one while you move to the next, and then you go back and forth and go, okay, let's focus on making sure this area looks complete and then we'll move on to the next area. But
100%.
don't overdo it and give yourself a repetitive strain while you're doing it.
Yeah, 100%. Same as like just sitting on the ride on all day. I heard
Yeah.
you talking to. I started listening to a few because I don't listen to podcasts a whole lot. Like I go through stages where I'll listen to like 30 of your podcast or 30 of someone else's, and
Yeah.
then I won't listen to them for 6 months. But
Yep.
yeah, I started listening to some last night. I was listening to you talk to the Husqvarna boys about like
Yep.
going from a sitter to a stander and then back to a sitter, and I was like, you
Yeah.
know what, that's probably a good idea. Like
Yeah.
Tuesday, I did 7 hours or something straight on the Skag, and
Yep.
I was screwed. It was more sunstroke the next day, but as we spoke about, but
Yeah.
yeah, like you get off it and you're like, oh, like
Yep.
your knees are
Yeah.
stiff, your back's stiff, like
I've done many days like that where you're sitting down on a ride on for 3 hours, 2 hours, or 6 hours, 7 hours straight. And you've literally got to stop and get up and stretch
yeah,
every now and then. And if you don't do it, then it's really hard work.
yeah.
And
That's
so,
what
the same's true with the stander, though. You
yeah,
stand on the stander for 5 hours straight,
oh
and you're still going to end up with some sore body parts. So there're going to be different ones that are sore.
yeah.
But
I
yeah,
find on the stander, I'm more if I see a branch or something, I'm more, especially on some of the properties we do it. Like if you munch up a branch like in the middle of like no man's land, it's not going to make or break the lawn sort of thing. You're not
yeah,
manicuring that section, but
yeah,
I find if I was on the stander, I've got more chance of getting up and picking it, like jumping off and picking it off instead of pulling
yeah,
the arms apart, climbing up,
yep,
getting back on. Like
yeah, fair. That's true.
so, I find I spend more time getting off the stander
Yep,
without even knowing I'm doing it instead of actually just getting off and having a break.
yep.
So
Yeah, that's fair. It does have that advantage, doesn't it?
yeah, and I find so I run a grandstand. I've had it a few years now.
Yeah,
I find I'm constantly moving around off like I'm not a little bloke, like I'm 120 kilos, but I find I'm moving around
yeah,
on that platform and standing on the edge of it and stuff like
yep,
that as I'm going on slopes, and
yeah,
instead of just sitting in one spot the whole time. Like
yep. Yeah, that does help, doesn't it? Because when you're on a stander, you need to move your body around as you change directions and as you're on slopes. But I've got a couple of areas that I'm mowing regularly where the slope is one direction. So if you're standing for a long time on one slope, then your
Yeah.
body's going, oh, this is getting a little bit grumpy and agitating some of the joints. And then you turn around, you go back the opposite direction, and it's a fairly lengthy run, might be 500 meters or 700 meters.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a spot like that up at one of our industrial sites, and it's like a spillway drain,
Yeah,
and we literally have to side shoot everything towards the drain because the other side there's trucks and stuff coming in and out on the road the whole time. And
yeah. That's where you want a Pro Shield.
mate, I've had one like when those
Yeah,
electric ones first come out. I don't even think he had them up on the website yet.
yeah,
I was like, I want one.
yeah,
And I'm like, I'll get it and I'll push it because back then we were doing a fair bit on Instagram. And I'm like, I'll put it on Instagram, like to show that how it lifts up and all that sort of stuff.
yeah.
And same as a lot of the stuff I bought from Ben, like it's all great gear, but I just find I was too busy at that stage to install it. And now half of it's still sitting in boxes. Like, so I've been trying to put the Pro Shield on for the last 6 months because I was like, yeah, we definitely need to put that on. Yeah, like I pulled it all out and seen how it all went together and stuff, and that's
Yeah.
where I stayed on the bench.
I literally got a Pro Shield in the mail 2 days ago.
Yeah,
No, they make it 3 or 4 days ago. Got it in the mail this week, either which way. And I had a Catch Pro already that I'd used on my walker,
yeah,
but I sold my walker going back 6 months ago now. And so Ben sent me the brackets for the Catch Pro to be mounted to the right stander eye.
yeah,
And the stander eye and the ZK have got almost identical decks where the outshoot is. So it's like you could swap it back and forth between the two easily.
yeah,
So I spent all day yesterday fiddling around with stainless steel rivets and brackets and getting that all sorted out. So the Catch Pro's on the stander eye now, and I've got a few photos that are going up on social media so people can see that.
yeah,
And I said to Ben, I said, I'll get the Catch Pro fitted first, and then I'll test out how I'm going to mount the Pro Shield.
yeah,
And the Pro Shield bracket is not easy to mount to the right. It's got a tab that's not quite on the edge of the deck. It's about 1.5 inches in,
yeah,
maybe 2 inches in. So I've been working out how I'm going to mount that. I think I've got it all sorted, but it's going to require a cut and weld and make the brackets suit. so
yeah, wow.
so that's like you. It's like, oh yeah, I should do that yesterday, but I'll do it next week.
So I've got it on. I'll have it on the grandstand, and
Yeah.
you're pretty lucky with the grandstand. It's a flat face.
Oh yeah, perfect.
So I literally pulled the Catch Pro out and just moved the little pin to which hole I wanted to go in, and bang, it was straight on. We're using it that day.
Nice. Awesome.
So, and I think the Pro Shield's got to be the same. Like it's got to, but like I've already looked at it. It's got to bolt straight on. It's just a matter of drilling the holes in the deck and bolting it straight on. Like
yeah. Well,
so,
the Catch Pro that Ben sold me, it was sold with the fitting for the Walker deck.
mm-hmm.
But what I'm talking about there is the actual Catch Pro itself. So not the bracket that's on the mower.
Yeah.
The Catch Pro
Like with
chute.
the tabs and
The chute itself is narrower and it's a different size to fit a Walker deck because they're a narrow profile deck.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a completely different profile to go onto a right.
Yeah, there you go.
So that's what I had to change. I had to drill out, I think, about 15 stainless rivets. And I don't know if you've drilled stainless before.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Oh, yeah. So that was fun. I worked out after wasting my time on one rivet that I could do it a whole lot quicker on the rest of them. But, you learn.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a bit of fun. But once that was done, the bracket that goes onto the deck for the right didn't take long to put on. And then, the Catch Pro just sits straight on that bracket, straight in. So that part was really easy.
Yeah.
But, the Pro Shield's going to take me a little bit of mucking around just to make a bracket that it can mount to easily.
Yeah. We used to run the the Toro mulch kit on the grandstand. When I first bought it, I bought it with a mulch kit because we brought it, I want to say 2019 maybe sometime.
Yep.
Maybe late 2019 because I bought when I started out, I just borrowed $5,000 from my mate to start a business and
Yeah.
went and brought all secondhand equipment. And as you know, when you start out, you say yes to everything. So I was taking on lawns that the little Time Master or whatever it was shouldn't have been able to do.
Yeah. Time Master.
I killed that pretty quickly,
As you would.
and being secondhand, and yeah, so I'd already seen the standards, and I'm like, that's a great idea. I want that.
Yeah.
And at that stage, we are still in drought, so I was like, well, let's put a mulch kit on. There's like I can't remember if the grandstand had a bagger option at that stage. I know the zero turns did, but I don't remember that having a bagger option at that stage. So we went with the mulch kit, so we're not leaving grass, as you know, spraying everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I seen the Catch Pros. I'm like, that's amazing. I want that.
Yeah.
Got that. Took the mulch kit off, and that's as that seasonal, like that weather shift happened. So I found we'll get more growth over the fortnight.
Yeah.
So the mulcher wasn't doing a neat job, which is why I wanted to start catching.
So tell me the blades you've used with the grandstand, because they're a bit finicky with blades. So if you're using the Toro blades for the mulch kit, they're not like a Ballard's Ripper or anything like that. They're a specific blade that Toro sells for mulching.
Yeah. So I started with the Toro mulch blades.
Yeah.
When I shifted across to the Catcher, it still had the Toro mulch blades on them.
Yeah. Okay.
Because like I was at that stage, I was pulling them off every few weeks and hitting them with the flappy disc and keeping them nice. And
yeah.
Then as they wore out, I still had the original high lift blades sitting on the shelf from when we put the mulch kit on, because the mulch kit on, like I got it from Taylor's and it had the mulch kit on it ready to go.
Okay.
I bought it all together.
Yep.
So when I took the mulch kit off at home, after a few weeks, I was like, oh, I'm not getting the results I want. So I actually went and pulled the blades off the shelf that come with it and threw them on, and never had an issue. And I just run the Toro, the standard Toro blades.
So is that the high lift ones that you're running now with the Catch Pro?
Yeah, I think they're the high lift ones. I think I'm pretty sure the grandstand comes with they've only got the two blades from Toro. You've only got like your standard blades for side shooting or your mulching blades when you run the mulching kit.
Yeah, okay.
So,
yep.
Fair enough. Yeah, like as long as those blades are sharp, I've always found it's done a really neat job.
Yeah, awesome.
So,
yeah, so that's worked well then.
Yeah, I've looked into the the Ballard blades and stuff like that, and
yeah,
I don't know. My problem is like I don't have them sitting on the shelf ready to go usually. So
yeah,
it's like, oh, I need blades for this, so I either go and see the boys at Taylor's or just Joe at Sylvie's, like or Tom at Tinks. Like I talk to all of them.
Fair enough.
And use all of them because I'm in different areas. So
yeah,
and sometimes one of them might have a part in that the other one doesn't. So it means I don't have to wait, basically.
Yeah, I've found with a lot of zero turns, the gator blades have been my preference, regardless of what I'm doing. But I'm often talking mulch kit in with a fabricated deck with gator blades and get pretty good results.
Yeah, well, that was my thinking with looking into all those blades, because I was going to go. I was actually a couple months ago looking at putting the mulching kit back on. I pulled it off the shelf and was like, oh, I just need some bolts to replace the ones that I didn't keep or they were rusty or whatever. And so I was like, I'm going to get some proper designated mulching blades and try that out and go back to mulching. But then, then we got a bit of rain again and all of a sudden the grass took off and I was like, oh, we'll put that back up on the shelf. And
they tell me gator blades are not great with a Toro deck.
Yeah, okay.
So particularly if you're trying to get a good finish with mulching and you're running the Toro mulching blades, supposedly that works really well with the Toro deck, whereas the gator blades, for some reason, they just don't suit the Toro deck real well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I always thought that, like, you probably, better off using the blades that come with it because they're designed to go with that machine. Like you'd like to think that they do all their testing and engineering and stuff. Like,
Well, I think Toro is a large company, so they would have done a lot of testing beforehand.
yeah,
Whereas a lot of machines, I've found the gator blades, when you're mulching, they do a better job of mulching the grass up finer.
yeah,
But this goes back to what I'm working with at the moment, the right with the Catch Pro on it.
yeah,
They've got the standard right high lift blades on them for side discharging.
yeah,
And I used it today with the Catch Pro for the first time in wet grass, and it packed that Catch Pro pretty well.
yeah, yeah,
So if I put gator blades on that, because I know what the gator blades, I'm using the rippers on the ZK,
yeah,
and they do not throw very far at all. So I'm like, no, that's not going to pack a Catch Pro very well. So
no.
it's either go the gators if I want to mulch, or go the high lifts if I want to pack the Catch Pro.
Yeah. Another thing with the Catch Pro as well is I don't know if they all come with it now, but do you know he's got his little screen on top, the little shake?
Oh, yeah, the dust screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine doesn't have the dust screen on it.
Mine didn't have it when I first started either. And being on a stander behind it, I messaged him real quick and said, hey, what's to go here? And he said, once again, he was like, oh, I've actually got this on my one.
Yep.
I think he was still developing at that stage. I said, well, as soon as that's available, like I want one, I need one. Like,
Yeah.
So, yeah, we got that straight away, and that's made a hell of a difference. But I find with that, like, don't just empty your catcher. Get your blower and blow it all out. Occasionally, get the hose it all out.
Yeah.
That allows that airflow through better, and you got to feel that Catch Pro a lot better.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that. It's like, if you're talking the conditions we're in at the moment, if you've got wet grass in there, you're going to need to either get rid of the dust cloth off the top altogether, or give it a really good clean out all the time so that it works well. So I'd almost want one with like button-on clips so that you can just pop that dust cover off when you're in wet conditions and put it back on when you're in dusty conditions.
Yeah, I just run mine full time.
Yeah, well, I don't think they're not made to come off, are they?
I don't think so. Like, yeah, they all screw in. Like, you could take it off, but yeah, I wouldn't like to all of a sudden hit a dirt patch and forget to have it on. And
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, so it makes the beard a bit itchy. So,
well, I'll let you know how I go, because, like I said, today was the first day using the Catch Pro on the right, and it was wet conditions, so not a problem with dust at all. But yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah,
next week might be a different story.
Yeah, you'll find out.
Yeah.
So that
Ben will find out. I'll be on the phone to Ben. Hey, Ben.
that was literally the first thing that the two guys that work for me at that stage said. They're like, "Oh, we love that it catches, but man, we've got to do something about that.
The dust.
Like, you just get covered in shit. Like,
yeah.
So,
fair.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, I might be in favour of getting the Pro Shield flap and just putting that down instead of catching too much.
Yeah, well, I haven't tried that yet, so that's what I'm interested to see, how well that actually mulches with the Toro.
Yeah, well, I'm firmly in the camp of mulching versus catching. It's mulching all the way, but we got to try both, because it doesn't matter what I think; it's what the customer wants at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think there's room there if you've got the right customer to educate.
Yeah, and I would educate them to mulch instead of catch every time.
Yeah, so I think there's benefits from both, like certain times of the year and stuff like that. Like, if you've got a lawn with a high weed infestation, like, I think catching comes into its own.
Yeah. Also, when you've got a lot of rain and the nutrition is getting through to the roots of the grass really quickly, then catching makes more sense than mulching. But when you've got less rain, or like we've got at the moment, where it's sort of you're getting rain but the ground's dry underneath, then mulching can just help to make sure that the nutrient value is getting returned to the soil.
Yeah, and I'm sort of looking into a lot more organic options, and as I was saying to you before about not having as much chemical around my house, because we've moved out of our storage shed that we were using and moved back to my place just to save a bit of money. And like, I'm looking at stuff like, instead of so much, I feel like in this industry a lot of people are just constantly feeding the plant and not actually feeding the soil.
I hear you, and I think there's room for both, because I'm talked to Wally from ICL
Yeah,
about this exact issue about, whether your soil profile is changing or whether you're just pumping in chemicals to make the grass grow quick.
yeah,
And I've heard somebody else talk about it before, particularly with nitrogen cycles and the
yeah,
addictive nature of the nitrogen cycle for the plant.
yeah.
So
And
yeah, I
you
think
you
those,
need both for it to be efficient. So the problem is we pump so much slow release and chemical and that out
yeah,
that when you actually step back and have a look at it, if you've got a really good soil profile, you won't need as much chemical because the
yeah,
chemical that you're putting in is going to be more available to the plant. So
yeah, for sure.
you're not putting it out as often. The other thing as well is if you've got healthy soil and a healthy plant, like you're not going to need to worry about pests and stuff like that as
Yeah,
much.
I think there's a lot of value in people looking at the soil profile they're working with before they work out how to deal with it too. Because you talk WA boys, they've got a sandy desert-like condition that they're then adding nutrients to. Whereas East Coast, it's predominantly clay, or if you've got an area which has been rainforest or had a lot of mulch, compost type elements there, then they're all very different to each other. And you may find that you need to be tickling the soil a little bit. If you've already got a lot of mulch and compost in the soil, you just need to be tickling the components that you need to make sure that it's at its peak. Whereas if you've got a lot of clay or a lot of sand, you got to work out how to get the nutrients down into the lower layers there. So it's not just what Wally called layered, where it's just a layer of compost or manure sitting on the very top, and the rest of it underneath is rock or sand or nothing.
Yeah, 100%. And that's even like once again with our area, it's so diverse that certain suburbs, like we had jobs in Redhead and up is it Fern Bay up past Stockton there, like where we were putting turf down,
Yeah,
and then we had jobs at like Billy's Lookout at Triaba where it was just like clay and sandstone and
yeah,
um like I find like with your turf, like your turf underlays that you buy, a lot of them are very high sand base, which is really good.
yeah,
Like you want that high sand content, but if you're putting turf down at a place like Fern Bay or Redhead where it's already high sand count, we actually went in with more of a soil based underlay
yeah,
for those areas to hold the moisture for the fresh turf. And
yeah,
um, I used to put down a lot more like dynamic lifter and stuff like that for jobs out like around Redhead and stuff.
yeah,
Um, than I would at say Trialba and places like that where I'd go in with more gypsums and
yep,
lay breakers and yeah,
yeah. You sound very smart talking about this because I know so many people have not recognised the different soil profiles like that, and I love working with a composted loam with a lot of manure mixed in with it. I think that's just one of the best things you can use in a lot of conditions. But like you say, you got to look at the different conditions to work out what's going to work well, right?
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
for sure. I'm like my property out at Lovedale. I'm actually over the last couple of weeks started an actual compost pile because we're going to be upgrading gardens and
yeah,
not just that, we've got citrus trees out there that we've planted and
yeah,
so yeah, like we've got so much green waste and stick and stuff like that from the gum trees out there, and I thought,
yeah.
why not just create a pile and in 6 months' time we could be putting that pile in ready for the next season, like
How much room you got for that?
out there.
Yeah, because I was talking to somebody about that on a couple of episodes ago, and I've got a plastic bin from Bunnings, the round bin that's sort of a metre tall and a metre wide, and it's open on the bottom, so you just have a lid on the top and you throw your kitchen scraps in there. When it's full up, you do the second bin, and then you let the old one compost down for a while, and then you tip that into the second bin
Yeah,
and move that bin over and start refilling it again. But when you're talking different scope, it was Brandon Martin down South Coast I was talking to. He's still in New South Wales. And he was talking about a compost pile that you turn over with a little excavator or a posi track or tractor or something like that. So
yeah,
completely different scale to what I'm talking about.
yeah, yeah. So I got a tractor out there with a bucket, like a front bucket on it.
Front loader, yeah.
So yeah, it's got a little 9-hole golf course around the actual premises.
Yeah.
And I think I actually spoke to you about putting a robot out there years ago, like 12
Yeah, I
months
think
ago.
that's the one we were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that yard itself, like the backyards from memory is about 1,200 square, and the front yard's like another 900 square. Like, and that's just the yard
Yeah.
around the house. So I think the whole property in memory is about 26 hectares.
Yeah. In that
So,
time since we talked about that, the
yeah,
amount of robots that have come out now where you don't need a wire in the ground is so many. There's so many options there.
I've been
And
looking into them big time.
yeah, they're starting to look more and more interesting
Yeah,
now.
they're definitely on the cards for me. Like I'm already looking at properties. Even had I've got a site down the road from Tom in Newcastle there,
Yeah.
and I got him down to actually show me the site and see what he thought about that one. And
Oh, yeah.
me and you have had quite a few phone calls about him. Like
Yeah.
it's definitely on the cards. It's just a matter of timing before
Yep.
I start putting them out there and having the right clientele.
Yeah, for sure. I think the Segway and the Husqvarna options are looking really good there, but the Luba is another one that's a really good seller at the moment.
Yeah, I've from all the like stuff I've looked into them, I'm really liking the Husqvarna, and I don't have. Sorry, I've got 2 8 liter of their power spray like
Yeah.
spray packs. Like
Yep.
that's the only Husqvarna stuff I have anywhere in my shed, and it's not because of anything else that
Yeah.
just was with other brands. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very swayed by the Husqvarna.
Yep.
I love the what's the program they use to track all the commercial ones?
Yeah, you got a mental blank on that. Sorry, I know what you mean though.
Yeah,
The fleet services.
yeah. I love the look at that. And then even like I've got one of my residential ones that's got a 50 square meter backyard, and I think I'm going to put in one of the little $1,300 ones just to do that little 50 meter square.
Yeah, this is what I was saying talking to the Husqvarna guys last week. That you may pay like for that base model Husqvarna that you're talking about, $1,400. You may pay a couple $100 more for that than for another brand, but it's got the Husqvarna name.
Yeah,
And same goes with the higher end ones. Like you start talking the nearer with the EPOS system, so do 3,000 square meters or 5,000 square meters.
yeah,
No need for a wire in the ground, or you can put a wire in the ground. Particularly, say if you've got a waterway nearby, you might go, "Oh, I don't really trust the GPS to not get into the water." Well, put the wire in the ground. When it gets to the wire, it knows that's the end stop.
yeah,
Don't go past there. So, but you do pay a little bit of a premium for that Husqvarna name
yeah,
compared to other brands. You go, okay, well, I know Husqvarna's got a dealer network and the backup and the experience in the industry.
yeah.
So yeah, they are a great choice.
Same as buying a 4-wheel drive. Like we all had the money, we'd all be driving around in patrols and Land Cruisers, but
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
and there's a few other brands coming through, and it's the same with everything, like the battery equipment. The reason why I ended up with a lot of steel battery gear is because at the time when I started going across the battery, it was still a Husqvarna, and
Yep.
um, it wasn't either of the fact that one was better than the other, because as you know,
Yeah.
every brand has one tool that's better than any other brand, and
Yep.
we can't carry all of them. But
That's it.
I just had a good relationship with the boys at Taylor's, and Mitch
Yeah.
had just started out his own steel shop at Belmont there, and
Oh yeah.
I just ended up on the steel train with that stuff, and
Yeah.
yeah, and I've got a bit of ego stuff now, like a mower and that
Yeah.
Butte bloody Miston fan, but
Oh yeah. Nice. Yeah. Well,
um,
I've been a still fanboy from the time I started my business. I've had a lot of still gear, and I
yeah,
really went Husky when it came to battery gear. I had a couple of Husky tools before I went to the battery gear there, and then when Ego started bringing out their commercial battery tools, it's like, oh yeah, they're really good too. So yeah,
yeah,
and nowadays I think when you're talking commercial quality tools, most brands have a good option when it comes to battery tools. And sometimes you still need a petrol tool at the moment. If you want a backpack blower, petrol's the only one that's really got the guts. That's going to change very soon though.
I think it's already changed. I use my battery blower.
Yeah.
So through January, I was doing a lot of daycares, and
Yep.
like blowing sand and stuff in that Sin 30, I was using I don't have the steel backpack blower. I have the 3000 battery with the biggest blower you could get a
Oh,
couple
yeah.
of years ago at the time. I can't remember the size of it.
It's
And
a 100 or a 200 or something like that.
I don't know, it's in the ute. But
Yeah.
yeah, I find that just as good as my steel backpack blower.
Okay. Wow.
Uh, and you don't have the noise. Like
Yeah.
we used to do a lot of daycares, and that's why I had the steel backpack blower in the first place. And constantly, oh, the kids are asleep. Like, can you come back at another time? And I'm like, well, I've got 10
Yeah.
other daycares to do today. Like, they're all going to be in the same situation. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Where this time I had the steel blower attached to the lanyard, like the backpack, the
Yep.
3000. And then I actually went and bought in January I think it's the 86 where the batteries slide into it.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And I just had them in both hands, and
Yeah.
it was great.
Yeah. Well, I found doing big blow jobs,
Big
the
what?
still big blow jobs. So when you say it again. Yeah. So my biggest blow job's car parks.
Yeah.
And I found I'm using the BR600 petrol backpack blower. I've got the Ego 1300 meter an hour handheld blower, and it is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But yeah, the still just it moves more, it moves quicker. And so when you're doing those massive big jobs, I still go to the petrol backpack blower. But I know listening to Ben and BJ on their podcast last week where they talked to Barry from Ego, it sounds like a decent increase in power is coming with a new backpack blower from Ego very soon.
Yeah. I actually spoke to one of the Ego boys a couple of weeks ago because I'm sort of at the point where I'm ready to start getting some new tools.
Yeah.
Over the next 12 months, like a few of the tools are sort of starting to wear thin.
Yep.
And like I love the first thing I bought was the Ego Polydeck mower because
Yeah.
the Toro was just too heavy for us to be lifted on and off the ute. And
Yeah. It's great, isn't it?
yeah, and
The select cut
yeah,
52 centimeter.
yeah.
I love it.
So I had that with the two 10 amp hour batteries, and we got a free blower with it, but the blower and one of the batteries got knocked off the back of one of the utes. And
I know.
yeah, I just liked it. I'd seen like the Ego. I don't know. I find in this industry, one person, mainly BJ, gets a new equipment, and then next thing you know, the whole industry is going, oh, we need Skag or we need this or.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I fall into it a little bit as well, but more the fact that um, I do a lot of looking into it before I'd go, yeah, that's the one I want.
Yeah. Well, I think the one that you can see has been a bit of a fanboy move is going for a 32-inch stander. And it was such a popular choice for everybody going, oh, you know what, it's going to make your residential run so much more profitable. And it's like, well, yes, it will, but it's not going to make everyone's residential run more profitable because some people can do a residential run like I did with a 42-inch ride-on.
Yeah,
So a 32 inch is a backward step. And
yeah,
some
yeah.
people can't fit the 32-inch into more than about 10 or 15% of their residential properties. So, again, it's not a good profit margin for some people. And people have rushed out and bought one and then gone, oh, you know what? It doesn't get used, so I'm selling it.
Yeah. So I had my first secondhand one was a 36,
Yeah.
the zero turn, and then when I was going to a stander, I was looking at is it Gravely?
Yeah.
For two reasons. They had the 32 already,
Yep.
and I think they might have been one of the only ones that had it, or
Yeah.
at least at the dealers around Newcastle area.
Gravely was one of the first, the Pro Stance 32. That was one of the first ones that was available in our area.
Yeah, and I was tossing up. I didn't want anything bigger than a 36 just because of the trailers I had. I probably could have fitted a 42 on there, but I was happy
Yeah.
with the 36.
Yep.
And so Gravely had the 32 that nearly sold me on that, and they had the foot control.
Oh, yeah.
And then yeah, the reason why I ended up with the grandstand is because coming off the golf course, all we had used was Toro, and
Yeah.
I was happy with Toro. Like I'd bought this secondhand Toro, and I was like, if that can survive what I put it through, then I'd love to see what a brand new machine can do. And
Yeah.
but in saying that, I have seen places for a 32, but at the end of the day, if I didn't have my ride on, I would have been push mowing those lawns anyway with a
Yeah.
self-propelled mower that you're not really pushing. So,
Yep.
the old Honda back then got a good workout, and the 36 just come out when we had the bigger stuff, and I could fit it through a gate.
Yeah, fair enough.
So
yeah, I think that's something like it. There's a lot of people who will benefit from a 32, but I think a lot of people jumped on the game. And you're, yeah, that's going to be good, and then realised later, you know what, I would have been better off with a 36, or I would have been better off staying with a 30-inch walk behind, or go up to a 42, or stay with something that's lighter and more nimble to be able to get up and down steps.
yeah, and I think the biggest thing when you're going to buy anything is actually have a look at your run and look at where your business is wanting to go to. Like if I went and brought the Skag 61 because I had that property out at Lovedale, and I was looking to getting into bigger stuff, and I still am. And to be honest, over the last 12 months, that's pretty much sat at that property and hasn't really been used anywhere else. Like occasionally I've brought it down to a few other properties, and I'm like, the effort of towing that bigger trailer, I can just take my 36 and get it done just as quick.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I've found having the ZK61, going from a Walker that had 42-inch deck and a 56-inch deck I could interchange,
to
the 61, it's been hugely more productive.
Yeah.
And that's been a game changer for my business because it saves me so much time.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's just not going to suit everyone. And like you say, when it's only sitting on one property and you're moving it is not always easy. A 61-inch mower, you need a bigger trailer.
Yeah. So, and then you need, like I can throw my smaller trailer on my old little Hilux tippy that I use most of the time. But if I'm taking the 61, I've got to take the D-Max, and it's got a canopy on it. So then half the tools don't fit in there. Like, so you just really need to look at where the biggest thing is, not just looking at what you already got, but where you want to go with your business and really decide that's where you want to go. Like I know I want to go into bigger stuff and have a bloke sitting on that mower 7 hours a day. So that's why I bit the bullet and went and probably bought it earlier than what I needed. But now I know that if something comes up, I've got the confidence that I've already got the machine there and I don't have to scramble or go and see my little mate Mick Carroll and say, hey, give me one of your machines for a few weeks.
Did you know that Wright has several different mowers to suit different size properties and different types of work? They range from the cute 32 all the way up to the big 72-inch standard that Kyle loves. Well, all the Wright mowers are built to be used commercially, and they have some great design features to make sure they save your business time and money season after season. Wright have carefully selected each engine to ensure it is very capable, yet fuel efficient for the work it's designed to do every day, all day. One of the features that got me over the line with Wright is the AeroCore deck. It's one of the best deck designs in Australia currently, clearing huge amounts of grass when side discharging, while still great for catching, and it mulches well with a variety of blades. I'm about to throw a set of gator blades on, and will be sharing my experience for sure.
So
yeah, good old Mick.
Yeah,
it's a challenging one, isn't it, to try and forecast what changes you want to make in your business and actually make it so that those changes you make are profitable. It's not always easy.
Yeah. So, and it doesn't suit everyone. Like I know Blanchy around here, like me and him had a lot of chats when he was like, I've had 2 vehicles going, blah, blah, blah. And I could tell that he just wasn't happy doing it that way. Like he enjoyed the guys who work for him and stuff like that. And he still gets them in every now and then, but I could just tell that he wanted that freedom of going back to just being by himself. And I'm like, well, just do it, man. Like, and now talking to him, he's happy. Like he's making just as much money by himself because he hasn't got the wages every week, and gets the boys in every now and then when he needs them. But
and this is the thing, going back to what I was saying at the start, like you've had some great successes in your business and you've done things that I know I can learn from you. I've gone through a bunch of changes in my business over, it's 14 years very shortly that I've hit. And one of those things that I've really struggled with is having staff and making sure it's profitable. Other people you see come in and they're like, oh yeah, I've got 4 people, 5 people, 10 people working for me. And, Brandon Martin down South Coast there, he's got lots of employees working with him. He's only 24 years old and I wouldn't say he's got it all together, but he kind of does. And
Yeah.
he's doing things which I'm like, I'm scared of doing that. And I'm more than twice his age. Well, no, about twice his age. It's like, you know what? Age sometimes brings wisdom with it. And sometimes you or I might go, well, you know what? Working solo is really attractive.
Yeah.
Why push myself? And other people go, well, that's exactly what I want. You want to run 10 employees,
Yeah.
100 employees.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I go through stages where I'm like, it'd be so much easier. I've got a couple of contracts that I know I could just kick back and potentially just do them each
Yeah.
week for 3 or 4 days a week and only work 4 days and have 1 or 2 clients
Yeah.
and not have I'd be doing big sites, but not have the rigmarole of chasing for money all the time. I know that they pay at the end of every month, but
Yeah.
at the same time, the thing that stops me from doing it is I keep looking back and saying, when I get like that, why did I want employees in the first place? And it's
Yeah.
just like I'm not old, but I'm 36. Like,
Yep.
I know that in 10 years' time, 15 years' time, I may not be able to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do then? Like,
Yeah. Well, let's talk about numbers for a second. And I really want to hear your numbers, but you might not want to share them. So tell me you don't want to talk about it. But I'm going to throw out a couple of numbers that the industry works with. If
Yeah.
you work on your own, chances are, if you just go expenses versus profit, which is not a good way to look at it, but it's what most of us do. Expenses are probably around 40 to 50% of your dollars that come in. So your total turnover.
Yeah.
And if you're working solo, that's going to be somewhere true. It might be 50%. It might be less than 50% is expenses. Sometimes some people might be over 50% in expenses. Depends on whether you've done your numbers well or not.
Yeah.
If you put on an employee, then your profit, going to a new number there, it's a more realistic profit margin.
Yeah.
Our industry is around 15 to 30% profit.
Yeah.
So if you're on your own, and you're going, all right, I need to hit around 55, 60% profit for every dollar that comes in. If you're turning over $100,000, that's $55,000, $60,000 in your hand after you pay your expenses. So double that, and you're going to be comfortable in today's society where you go, oh, $200,000 turnover and 120 grand in the bank, 110 grand in the bank. I can live off that.
Yeah.
You can do with 55, 60 grand in the bank if you're set up well.
Yeah.
But if you're paying employees and you're going, oh, there's, between 15 and 30% is what I've got to live off after I pay the employees for the work that they do, then you're still going to find yourself on the tools because one employee is not going to make you enough money to be comfortable. And you get up to about 5 employees and then you go, oh, now I need to have an admin staff. Get up to 10 employees and then you need 3 admin staff. And you go, that expense ratio gets worse, not better, as you start to break through those first barriers of gaining employees to make sure you're profitable. And you might have, I'd say, 20% profit, which is quite reasonable and achievable. You want to have $100,000 left over after you pay your employees. That's $500,000 plus turnover that you need.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's if you're doing reasonably well.
Yeah, and a lot of that as well is like I get into the bad habit of going big basically. So like I go and buy a Skag.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it needs a trailer. So now I'm 45 grand in the hole that I've got to then ship away at. Like,
yeah.
So I think with that, like there's definitely a thing for just being a solo operator, having a ute and just doing push mowing, because really all you need then is a mower, a whippersnipper, a blower, and a ute.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you can always add some expenses there if you start doing some treatments and renovations and bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Or you can sit there and go, you know what, I've got a really profitable residential run with a Honda mower.
Yeah.
And a Stihl whippersnipper and a blower or a Husky.
Yeah, or a Shindawa.
Then,
oh, man, I love my Shinny. I love it. So I don't use it often these days, but I love it. But yeah,
I've never had them. I've had an Echo. When I was growing up, we had an Echo.
Yeah.
But never had a shinny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you've got 3 tools and a ute, then your profit margin, instead of being around 55, 60%, it might be up around 85%, which, shout out to Mark Ladaway. I think he's up around that sort of figure.
Yeah. But the thing is, if you're like that, you can sit under that GST threshold
And still be comfortable.
and still be comfortable. And where some guys might be charging $70 a lawn,
Yep.
you get away with charging it. And that's the biggest thing. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but that's the biggest thing about these social media groups is how much do you charge for this job? At the end of the day, and I'm not great with my numbers, which is why I'm in the situation I'm in and getting someone else in. But
yeah.
at the end of the day, you need to look at what you're talking about. Like, if you've just got a mower, a whippersnipper, and a blower, and you want to earn 80 grand a year, then how many lawns do you have to do to get that 80 grand a year?
Yeah. Look, the LMCA and the Australian Professional Contractors, they're great and they're terrible at the same time. I highly recommend them when I'm doing the podcast, always saying, if you're not in those groups, go and join them.
Yeah.
But they can be really toxic as well. And like you say, when you're out there and you ask the question, how much should I charge?
Yeah.
And you get people who are, on the cowboy end and charging $25 or $50 or something. Then the other people are like, that's a $400 job. And then you get other jobs where people are varying by that much, but it's a $500 job for the cheap guy and a $5,000 job for the expensive guy.
Yeah.
It's really toxic and hard to actually get a good gauge on some of those things. So,
100%. And the biggest thing is we might be able to go and charge $1,000 for that big lawn, but we've got the experience and the quality in our work history to charge that much.
That's right.
Where the bloke that started last month and his quality might be just as good at the end of the day. Like some of those cowboys that are getting around charging $30, some of those old blokes and blokes that are just getting a carton of beer on the weekend or whatever, like some of them still do a really good job, but they just don't need 500 grand a year in their business account. Like
that's right. And I think there's room for everybody in the industry.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of value in keeping those Facebook groups a little bit lighthearted.
100%.
Keep them lighthearted. No need for it to be toxic or taken too seriously. It's like, you know what? The group offers its best value when everybody's friendly and can handle a joke.
Yeah, for sure.
And, then it's the place where you can go, how much should I charge? And deal with a decent variety of answers. And you know what? I can learn from that.
Yeah.
I might not accept everyone's answer, but I can still learn from it.
I think the biggest thing with that is talk to some of the other local guys.
Yeah.
So we've got the Newcastle page, and there's another one up here now as well that I joined the other day.
Yeah, there's 2 Newcastle pages. I've just started a Central Coast one as well because I couldn't find one for the Central Coast, and there's a lot of people working on the Central Coast, and it seems there's not a lot of contractors in the main pages that are apart from the Central Coast. So it's like, all right, we'll weed them out, we'll find them, and try and get a Central Coast meetup happening soon too.
Yeah, I'll look out for it because we do a little bit of stuff down there, but not often. But
I'll make sure you're invited.
That way I can pass some work off to some of you guys down there that I don't want to have to travel down. But I when I first joined those groups, I got in the habit of in the trap of constantly just wanting to help out because I haven't been in the industry for 40 years like some guys, but that wasn't really around when I started out.
Yeah.
But I got in the trap, and then slowly I just started pulling back, and I don't post in there a lot these days. But if I see someone that looks like I can genuinely help them, I'll either post or I'll actually just send them a message and just say, hey, mate, this is what I do, or this is what I look at. And
well, I've noticed the OGs from LMCA have most of them have done that. They've pulled back, don't post much, don't share much, or they jumped onto the professional contractors page. So, I'm like, am I contributing to that page? Am I helping it to be a positive place so that people do feel comfortable to ask questions? So, I throw a few memes in there every now and then and get shouted at. It's like, I got broad shoulders, throw it, bring it on.
I don't even know if I'm still part of the professionals one. I'll have to have a look. I don't really go on there
Yeah.
when I get on social media, that's my escape, not to go back down the rabbit hole of what haven't I done for the day. But
Fair.
yeah, I think it's a good thing. But I think the biggest thing, like I've always been a person since I started to wave to the other contractors, stuff like that, and I've got my own little network up here and I think everyone should have their own networks. Like my network doesn't have to be your network.
Yeah.
There might be some of the same people that cross over into both, but
Yeah.
like I talk to Michael and like Blanchy and and Andrew from Harold's Lawns and stuff like that. Like a few of those guys pretty regularly. I've just started working with. I know some guys think I'm they're the enemy, but the Coochie Hydro Green.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So we're
I just find that business name so funny every time I hear it. It's like there's a couple of things in that name that just make me go, oh, that's taken a different direction to what I was expecting.
yeah. You can definitely make some memes out of those names. But
oh yeah.
yeah, so I've just started working with those guys, and they're actually doing one of my lawns, one of my regulars.
Nice.
Next week for the first time, and
yeah,
like I just think if everyone has that network, we can all help each other where needed. Like we don't have to be in each other's pockets all the time, but
yeah,
I want to talk about robots, I'll give you a call, or I give Tom a call. Like if I want to talk about Skag, I give Michael a call and tell him to send over some of his adult footage. And so I know how much he loves them, but you know what I mean? And I find that Andrew gives me a call a lot about like chemical applications and that, because if I don't know, he knows I've got the contacts to find that stuff out. So I just think if you'll find, if you look in your areas, you'll find that little network of people. Like obviously some of the country boys might not have that advantage, but even off those like pages, if you find that group of people that you're constantly talking to, you don't need to constantly go onto that page like, how much would you charge for this hedge? Like you can go to them and say, hey man, like I'm a bit unsure about how long I think this hedge will take me. And I think that's the biggest thing would be, instead of saying how much should I charge, like how long do you think this hedge would take you? Is like, is there any ways I can make it a bit more efficient so I can get better value for what I'm charging? Like,
yeah, for sure.
So I think we need to go more down like the technique side instead of just how the dollar figure.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of value in both of those, right? So what I see value in with my podcast is helping people get their techniques right. So when people want personal advice, there's two things they want to know. One of them is, how do I do the job better? And the other one is, how do I do business better? So generally speaking, if they need help with hedge trimming, there's a host of people in LMCA or people like yourself, like in the Newcastle Contractors Group. You can probably reach out to somebody and go, hey, can I come and spend half a day with you doing some hedging?
100%. I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
People will do it. You don't have to worry about your competition. It's like, no, it's friendly and it's helpful for the industry. It improves everything, doesn't make you at risk. So it's great. But then on the other hand, like people listen to my podcast and they go, you know what we find the best value is when you get to the end of the podcast and you ask the guy the questions like, how many rigs do you have? How many employees do you have? How much turnover do you have? Those are the things where people go, oh, okay, I can now understand what Adrian's business looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I sort of look for on your podcast, like the other week I was, I don't know how long ago it was, but listening to the guy that does weekly mows and always mulching and stuff like that. And that was something I always wanted to get into, like coming from the golf course, was that high end premium lawn sort of thing. And like listening to him, like it's like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like the weekly lawn, like we're mowing the golf course twice, basically all the grass twice a week minimum. So the greens are getting mowed 5-7 days a week sometimes. And then that led down to the rabbit hole of, hey, need to speak to my little mate down at Cooranbong about these robot mowers that are mowing 7 nights a week. Like
that's it.
Yeah. So
I was just listening to Paul Jameson, the American guy. He's the Green Industry Podcast, biggest podcast in our industry. But he's American. So you can filter out some of what he says and that's not relevant. But listening to him today before I come to talk to you, and he was talking about bi-weekly versus weekly.
Yeah.
And how in his area, he just will not do bi-weekly. He said, there's a cowboy out there that'll do bi-weeklies if you need it, but I'm only taking on weeklies. And I'm like, there is so much room in Australia for people to go, I'm only offering weekly work.
Yeah.
You want the best, it's weekly. And it doesn't have to be weekly all year round, because even the American guys, they've got about 4 months, 5 months out of the year where they cannot do anything at all in a lot of America.
Yeah, the snowblow jobs.
Yeah. Yep. So, I look at that and I go, weekly cuts should be anything from 26 to 30, maybe even 35 cuts a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
There-
they're
there
premium
is a-
customers. So
There is a benefit from weekly cuts through winter as well, but because
yeah,
you're
for sure.
stopping your poa and
Yep.
or your winter grass from going to
Guess what?
seed.
You put a robot mower on there and you won't have a problem.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting there. Like and with my residentials, you're talking about the American podcast. Like
Yeah.
before I really got on, you must have only just been starting out with your podcast. How long have you been running this one for now?
2.5 years. So
Yeah, so it was
back
probably
in
just
mid
before you
2021.
Yeah, it was just before you started out. I started listening to the green industry and a couple of the guys from over there because there was nothing over here really.
Yeah.
And there was one, I can't remember which one it was. It might have been green industry where they talk about this university where they teach you to run your landscape maintenance business, and they talk about setting up set packages for residential, like
Might be Mike Enders.
yeah, maybe.
Augusta Lawn Care. Does that sound familiar?
I don't. I'd have to go back. I'll find out and I'll send it through to you. But
Yeah.
it talked about this this online school that you can pay for.
Yeah.
And it teaches you how to set up like a costing system. And I was like,
Yep.
so each visit they're paying so much, and I was like, oh, I don't really need to do the school, but I could sort of take something from that. And I actually set up my residentials on a bit of a subscription package. So I worked out
Yeah.
the cost for the whole year, and if I did it now, I'd probably do it better. But back then, I sort of, some places I undercut myself, some places I went over, but I set them up on a fortnightly visit all year round and charged them a fixed monthly price. And that was for lawns, gardens.
Yeah.
They got fertilizing twice a year, a celloprine down, weed spraying for broadleaf.
Yeah.
All the, like if we were doing a hedge and I seen that it had lily pilly beetle or something, we just treated it straight away. It wasn't going back to the customer and saying, hey, can I do this? It's going to cost you this much. I just knew that, say, I was getting $500 a month off that person.
Yeah.
And our job was to make sure that every time they walked out in the yard, they just went, oh, wow. Or they didn't even notice the yard basically because it was just the same all the time, all year round.
Yeah.
And
I use some numbers like that talking to people about quoting residential jobs. And I'm like, okay, if you do a 20 cut a year job for residential at $100 per cut, that's $2,000 a year.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to put it to the customer. This is going to cost you $2,000 a year.
Yeah.
Now, if you want it to be better, then let's bump it up to about $3,000 a year. And that means you're going to get weekly cuts when it needs it, fortnightly cuts, and then off the shoulder in winter won't get cut unless it needs it through winter. And then if we go up a little bit more, we start adding treatments in. So that way the customer starts thinking about how much it's going to cost them per year rather than each service.
Yeah.
And then you can, like you say, you can break it down and go, do you want to pay monthly? Do you want to pay weekly? And get them on a subscription service for those things. But
yeah, for sure.
it gives you a lot of scope when you go, okay, let's talk about the annual amount here. And do you want to be my bare minimum, which is fortnightly cuts for 20 cuts a year? Or do you want to be the absolute premium customer where it's going to look like a golf course all year round? Or do you want to be in the middle where I want you to be?
Yeah. And I think I know when I started out, I never talked about like that yearly sort of price. Is that water real loud? Can you hear that?
Oh, it's quiet. I can hear it.
That's right.
Sounds like a waterfall up above
Oh,
your head.
yeah, I'm down in my garage, so the pipes come downstairs. So obviously, there must be a washing machine going or something. But yeah, I was always scared of saying to the customer, "Hey, it's going to cost you $2,000 a year for me to mow your lawn," because then all of a sudden you look and it's like, "Oh, well, a mower from Bunnings is going to cost me $300." But now that I'm a bit more experienced, the reason why they're reaching out to you is not because they can't afford a mower and you do have some people like that, but the majority of the clients I want are the ones that they're like me. Like I'm nearly considering paying someone to do my lawn because I don't have an apprentice anymore to do it. Like, they're just too busy to do their own place. And
Yep.
that was one of my advertising things at one point, was with that subscription package, was let us give you your weekends back.
Yeah.
So, and even if your hobby is gardening out there, like, let us come in and do the bulk of it. Let us do the hedges. Let us do the weeding. So you just come in and you do a little bit of pruning around your roses or whatever, and they're already healthy. So you're not really doing anything, but you're just out in the garden actually enjoying your time out there.
Yep.
So yeah, I think breaking down, and I do this with all my places now, even my commercials. And that's where it sort of started from as well, is working out that yearly cost
Yeah.
and breaking it down to whether they're going to be paying monthly, weekly, fortnightly, whatever you or them need to pay. But
Yeah.
if you can work out that schedule for the whole year,
Yep.
then you know at a certain point that it's August, it's August, July, I need to start spraying for bindies. Like,
Yeah.
then you don't have that discussion at that time of year, because they've already pretty much paid for it. You just get in and get it done. And
Yeah. That's it. Well,
yeah,
see, I start these days because I'm only doing commercial work. I'm not doing residential anymore, but I start with the scope of work. So you want to quote, what's the scope of work? And if they don't know what the scope of work is, I'll make the scope of work so that we've got really clear expectations of what's getting done there.
yeah,
And like you say, when you go to quoting on an annual amount, it might seem really, crazy because it's a huge amount for a commercial contract. But the scope of works is the priority. That's what they don't have the capacity to do themselves. So get the scope of work right, and then we'll work out what that's worth on dollar value.
yeah. And I
And
did the same thing with my commercial sites. Like, I've just done one now, and it's through another company, like a cleaning company I work with, and it's
yeah,
I don't want to say the place because I don't want anyone else
yep,
swooping in, but
yeah,
um, I've just put through a price, and it is probably higher than not what they can afford, but maybe what they want.
yeah,
But I said to him, "Well, tell him that's the bee's knees. Like, basically, for that price, if
yeah,
you have something coming up on the Friday,
yep,
and you call me and say, hey, we've had a storm blow in, there's leaves everywhere, can you come tidy it up?'
yeah,
Then I'll drop what I'm doing, or have someone else finish off what I'm doing, and I'll be there to make sure it's tidy for you before that event. Or
yeah.
um,
And that's where that scope of work covers that. It's like the expectations are you're available certain amount.
yeah,
That's part of
and
the expectation. That's what you're paying
yeah,
for.
and I'm like, that's weekly. Like, so if okay, we don't want to do that amount, let's scale it back for winter for 3 or 4 months and drop it to
Yeah.
fortnightly through that time. And
Yep.
so yeah, and I think the resi guys, like, obviously you mow and blow guys, like, at the end of the day, you're just mowing and blowing. Like, you don't really need that scope, that detail.
Well, there's jobs for those guys. Those
Yeah,
jobs are not the jobs I want.
no,
But there's jobs out there which are perfect for mow and blow.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And it's where 99.9% of us started, was just those mow and blow jobs.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah, so, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's room for, especially a lot of you guys that do a lot of gardening and hedges and stuff like that,
Yeah.
to look at these scopes that we do with the commercial stuff and start introducing it into the
Yeah.
residential, because all of a sudden then you can be putting growth regulators. And
Yep.
I use initiator tablets um, to like, on a lot of my hedges and stuff, to stop the bugs from actually getting to the plant.
Yeah.
Like, you can really go down that preventative, because your average Joe Blow is not going to pay for something that's not a problem.
Yeah, that's right. So
So
this is where having a scope of work with a residential client makes a lot of sense, because if you're telling them it's going to cost them $2,000 a year and they go, wow, I should buy a $300 mower. Yeah, you can buy a $300 mower, but look at the scope of work that I'm doing for you. You're getting a lot more value from me than just a mower.
yeah,
And that's where a scope of work is kind of your key to saying this is what value you're getting from me. You are, if, if you want this, you're getting a premium service. If you don't want this, then go and get the blow and mow guy at a $50 job
yeah,
and happy days. So, but I'm offering this service, which is higher level. Here's what we agree to. This is what the expectations are on each of us.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And don't be. I see it a lot as well. Don't be angry if the last guy, or
Yeah.
oh, I got another quote, you're ripping me off. Like, don't
Yeah.
take offense to that. Like, at the end of the day, they weren't a customer you wanted anyway. So I know it's a bit of a laugh on the social pages and stuff, but
Yeah.
I see it a lot, and I'm just like, we're starting to develop this attitude that it's sort of, I don't know, I feel like it's going to go against us. So,
Yeah.
like I walk away from jobs where I've gone in and said, look, if you want me to do this, this is my price.
Yeah.
I know that's quite dear. I am more expensive than other guys. You might get someone in here to do it for $60, and I've quoted them 180. Like,
Yeah. That's
I
right.
said, you could, and I've gone into other jobs where I don't, like my latest video I posted up on TikTok. I haven't put it on Instagram. That was a big cleanup sale where the flea bane's like above my head and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I sort of enjoy those sorts of jobs, but I've gone into other jobs where I know that I'd enjoy it, but I've looked at it and gone, this bloke doesn't need me charging them $1,000. They could get some bloke in here for $100 that's got to go in and make a mess. And I said, then they can get me back and tidy it up for $200 or $300, and they're going to save themselves $700 over the day, and still ended up with pretty much the same result. And I've told them that, and I said, here's a guy's number. Ring this guy. He'll come in. He'll cut it all down, do basically the hard work for me, and make a mess and leave it looking a mess. And then I'll come back next week and I'll tidy it up for you and make it look good.
Yeah. And this is where you don't get offended by the last guy requests. The last guy did it for $20 or $50. It's like, no, you ask me because of my reputation.
Yeah.
Now, my reputation comes at a cost, and that's why I think 3 quotes is really good, because I give you the cheapest possible quote for me to maintain my reputation, the highest end possible quote, and the mid-range, which is where I'm trying to direct people to. So that way, I don't want people who want the last guy. If they want the last guy, go for it. But if you want my reputation, this is where we start, this is where we finish, and I want you in the middle.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes the high end, that premium's not worth it because it is a lot of effort.
I discourage people for going for the premium. If they want it, awesome. But if you want to filter people, then no, that's not for you. You're not a golf course. Oh, you want to be a golf course? Awesome. But otherwise, it's like, no, we've got the 3 options there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just lured by that premium because I just know that's more of a pride thing. Like I can post that stuff and be like, look at this. Like, this is me. Like, sort of thing. Like, I did this.
Yeah.
But that's more, I don't know. That's more of a see how high I can piss up the trough when I was a little kid sort of thing. Like,
yeah, that's it. But see, that's the thing, right? If you've got 20 customers, and we're talking like large commercial contracts now instead of like residential, because residential you probably want 80 plus customers, maybe 50 or 60 at minimum.
Yeah.
When you're talking bigger contracts, say you got 20. Out of those 20 contracts, you might find a lot of them are at your base bare minimum. This is what I need to keep my reputation. And then you've got that one that says, I want this place to look like a golf course.
Yeah.
And it's like, awesome. I want to spend all my time at the golf course instead of at the industrial complex where I'm just spraying Roundup in the gravel.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry.
You're right.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. Like, you don't, I don't know. One of our biggest places is a scrapyard, and they constantly want the place improving. And when I first got there, we spent 4 days in a 1.2 ton whatever excavator ripping lantana out.
Yeah,
all their green zones. And now, with the season we just had, we missed out on mulching last year, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, the weeds are out of control. I'm like, yeah, because you guys didn't want to mulch last year. Like, so that now that's I could have just gone in there and tidied it up and kept it at that standard, but because I sort of went above and beyond, now they're like, we want it at that standard, which is sort of a good thing, because now when I go, we don't have like a 3-year contract or anything, but we just do a yearly work order. And with places like that, sometimes you don't need it because it's more effort for them to put in a new guy than it is to just keep the same guy on.
Yeah. And that's what I've found too. Like a 12-month contract is easier for them to manage a lot of the time than going, let's lock you in for 3 years.
Yeah. And they're the guys that actually taught me that. They said, if you sort of start throwing 3-year contract in with us, our lawyers are going to pick it apart, and all of a sudden we've got you over a barrel. He goes, you're better off just doing your yearly scope and agreement, and this is going to be the price. And so coming up to this financial year now, all of a sudden have seen how it can turn, and I'm a bit better with my scoping and a bit more organised than that, I'm going to take it all in there and say, well, this is the price for the year, and it's got to include mulching once a year. It's got to include this. It's got to include that.
Yeah.
And then that way it makes our job easier and your place better. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
so, yeah, but
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, well, hey, this has been great. We could keep on going for another 2 hours. We've done just over 2 hours, hey?
Yeah, well, it's been, 2 years building before we finally got one. So,
Let's wrap it up, but let's wrap it up with that overview of your business. So questions are, how many employees you currently have?
at the moment, it's just me and one offsider as a full-time guy, and
Yeah.
we occasionally have a couple of different guys that help us out casually.
Okay, and you said you've got 2 rigs by the sounds of it. So you got your D-Max as well as your Hilux.
Yeah, and then he's got a dual cab Hilux that we use as well. That's his
Okay,
car, and I just basically pay for him to use his car.
Yeah, okay, yep. So he gets paid an allowance for that. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
or I just fill it up and help him with tyres and services and stuff like.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever.
So the two of you are pretty busy full-time by the
Yeah,
sounds of it.
yeah,
And
definitely.
then you get casuals in to fill in extra stuff that you do.
Yeah.
So what sort of equipment you're running? You mentioned Skag, but and your grandstand. So that's 2 decent sized mowers.
Yeah, so I got my 61 Turf Tiger 2. I got my grandstand 36.
Yep.
We've got a 21-inch Toro commercial.
Yep.
We've got the Ego 21. What is it? The 52 Select Cut poly deck.
Yep.
So
anything particularly interesting that's sort of unexpected, like say a soil spreader, or like a bunch of chainsaws or tree climbing type stuff? Anything out of the ordinary or not?
I wouldn't say it's out of the ordinary, but yeah, we've got plenty. We've got a couple of steel battery chainsaws. So I've got the original Climb and Saw battery one.
Yeah, that's great. I've got a Husky that's comparable to that, and it's
Yeah.
almost just standard equipment for a person who does a little bit of gardening as well as lawns.
Yeah, and that's, to be honest, that's probably one of my favorite chainsaws I've ever had. Like, just with a bigger cog on it, so it feels like you're holding a small saw, but you're getting the cut of a big saw.
You're getting the faster cut speed.
Yeah. What else we got? No, I reckon these days it's basically just your general stuff. We run we've got 2 old secondhand pest control spray tanks, like with the Honda petrol mower.
Oh
on
yeah,
them.
that's interesting. That allow you to do a lot of spraying in a hurry when you're doing treatments.
Yeah, it's not so much in a hurry. Like, it turns spraying a lawn into sort of a 2-person job with the hose.
Oh yeah.
But it means we can make up bulk tank and just go, this week we're going to spray, and it did make a difference once we got that golf course, because so that's probably a bit different than not a lot of the guys run.
Yeah, well, I've got a 100-litre sprayer that I bought for my walker when I had the walker, and that it's got I think it's about a 4-metre or 5-metre boom.
Yeah.
So with 100 litres, that it does speed up your work, because otherwise, if you're talking a 10-litre, 15-litre backpack, then
you're constantly mixing.
Yeah, saves you a lot of time when you go up to a big boom sprayer.
Yeah, save your little tip for old players. Save your 15 and 10-litre drums, old chemical drums.
Yeah.
Pre-mix at home.
Yeah. So mix up what you need at home, and then you can. Yeah.
And then you just fill it, and you're not taking straight chemical with you then as well, but you can still top up on the go. But all of a sudden, when you get to that place where you haven't got a tap nearby, you've got a drum sitting there to just go straight in.
I will give a word of warning with that for people. Need to make sure you check your ChemCert requirements on that, whether you're carrying a particular type of product and how you're carrying it, because you can start to run into issues very quickly. I know in New South Wales, we can spray 20 litres in a day without needing a ChemCert, but as soon as you go over more than 5 litres of concentrate or 20 litres of mixed product, then straight up you need to be trained with ChemCert.
I think everyone should get. I actually need to renew my ChemCert, because they didn't carry down from Queensland and expired. But at the end of the day, you need one person with your qualified ChemCert, because then Like I can technically be spraying with my offsider that's there because his chem cert's still current.
I think it's DC in Queensland, isn't it?
ACDC.
Yeah, ACD. We'll get it.
ACDC or
Applicators something. I can't remember what
yeah,
it stands for.
I can't remember, but yeah.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I think everyone should do it, and I think everyone should. Another tip is when you are going to do it, don't just do that course. Look into the you can do individual units out of like your trades.
Yep.
So you can actually do the chemical and the weed
Yes.
part out of your sports turf management trade, which is greenkeeping.
Yep.
And then you gotta learn a lot more.
So in the New South Wales one, your chem cert also comes with the option to do the specific application for weed treatments.
Yeah. So I think if you want to go down that path, definitely look into it because it will make a difference to your business.
Yeah. Okay. So the last question, tell me you don't want to answer this if you don't want to, but in terms of your business size, can we talk about turnover or size of your business from that side of it, financials?
I haven't done end of year financials yet for last year, but I know I took a hit last year compared to previous. I think my biggest might have been maybe around the 400, maybe just over.
Yeah, okay.
But it's always been sort of, I don't know, over the 5 years between that 200 and 500.
Yeah.
But in saying that, profit margin's been like minus sort of thing most years. Like, once again, bad money management and ADHD and stuff like that. So
it's funny that, isn't it? The profit margin is often more interesting than the total turnover, and for the accountants, that's where it's at.
Yeah,
but it gives people a sense of how big your business is too, to talk about both. So yeah.
But in saying that, I think a lot with our industry, like, once again, I don't want to incriminate myself, but I don't, like, my car's paid for.
Yep.
Like, if you step back and had a look, pulled a lot of that stuff that transfers over, it changes it a lot.
And that's massive, right? If you're talking about whether you have a lot of debt in relation to your equipment and your business versus whether you've paid for everything out of cash.
Yeah.
And, if you're running lean and you've paid for everything with cash, then you're in a great position to be able to handle any sort of adversity that comes your way. But at the same time, if you want to take on a $200,000 contract tomorrow, chances are you're going to be talking to the bank about buying a $50,000 this and a $20,000 that, just so you can take on the contract. So you might say, yep, it's $200,000 a year contract, but initially there's going to be an investment in that to get it started, which will take 3 years to pay back the cost of the equipment you bought.
Yeah, 100%. So, and I know that at the end of the day, my business the way it is now, I could run it like that for the next 3 or 4 years, and all of a sudden I'm out of debt and I don't have to change anything because I've taken those hits at the beginning.
Yeah, that's it.
So,
yeah. Well,
yeah,
this has been great talking to you, Adrian. I appreciate it. I think everyone will learn something from what we've talked about today. So,
thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.